itaelezwa hapo mbele. Na kutuanzishia, ningependa basi tutasimama. Ningemuita mwenzangu Lorraine Achen akuje mbele kidogo, ambaye atatuombea, na tutasimama kwa wimbo wa taifa wa Kenya, kisha pia wimbo wa taifa wa jumuiya, kisha maombi, alafu tutaelekea. Lorraine, kuja mbele kidogo.
Whatever it is that we are here to discuss, O Jehovah King of Glory, Father, we ask that we will be able to implement and take into consideration everything that is on that document. Father, even for the ones who are on their way coming, we pray that you hasten their steps, that they may be able to reach here safely. We thank you for everything, and we commit this meeting into their able hands. For this we pray, believing and trusting in Jesus' name. Amen.
All right, so chief guest and members, like I mentioned, we have a brief program as shown on the screen. We have already heard the national anthem and the prayer. We will move quickly to the introductions. Later we'll have remarks from the chief guest, and then a presentation of the updated tolling policy. Then we'll welcome contributions before we close again with the closing prayer, and then we'll have lunch. In between, there'll be served a cup of tea, so we will decide whether we want to break formally for tea or we can grab a cup during the presentation as we proceed. So before we start, chief guest, with your permission, I want to play a small video which will lay context to the reason why we are here, and then we'll be guided thereafter. So we can have a few minutes for the video.
The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Kenya is taking its first steps towards a future where road travel is faster, smoother, and more efficient, thanks to ventures like the Nairobi Expressway. Mombasa Road, Thika Superhighway, and other key roads in Nairobi are crucial lifelines. However, they have become congested, leading to wasted time, higher costs, and strained resources.
Traffic is too much. I take like 1 hour to town. Yeah, if it's possible, they can add more lanes.
Kama asubuhi ukienda job unapata unachelewa. But I think kila mtu anatoka asubuhi. Sio kama kuna kitu serikali inaweza fanya, at least kitu tunaweza kama sana. Tunapoteza time nyingi kwa
These roads, while vital, can no longer keep pace with the Nairobi's growing population and economy. Enter the Nairobi Expressway, Kenya's new road to the future. With just a small toll, motorists enjoy a fast, efficient, and an uninterrupted journey across the city. This modern infrastructure slashes travel times, reduces traffic congestion, and improves road safety. Easy and efficient. Whether you prefer paying at the booth or the convenience of the electronic toll collection system, toll roads offer seamless travel.
Hii expressway imesaidia sana. Juu kitambo hasa Mombasa road ilikuwa na jam sana. Kwanza kutoka airport ukuja hizo roundabout zote tatu tulikuwa tunasumbuka sana. Lakini sasa vile imekuja nimetumia dakika 10 peke yake kutoka South Sea hadi hapa hivi.
The Ministry of Transport is committed to building a better future for our roads, championing the construction of more toll roads across the country. With tolls providing consistent revenue, these projects are not just beneficial to users, they are highly profitable for investors. Every vehicle that passes through generates income, ensuring investors reap substantial returns while contributing to Kenya's economic growth. The future of road travel is clear.
Thank you very much. So basically we know why we are here and the solution we are seeking from this brief video you have seen. So now I want to take this opportunity, Chief Guest, to have the members introduce themselves so that we know who is in the house. I will ask my team to circulate the mics, and we will start from that table, going around. The mics are here. So we can start from that table. You can tell us who you are, where you are coming from.
I'm Christopher Mogo, Deputy Director for Finance at Kenya Roads Board.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Pauline Kariuki from the National Land Commission. I'm a principal land admin officer in charge of public institutions in the country. Thank you.
Good morning once again. My name is Lorena Cheng from Media Council of Kenya. I'm a senior officer, corporate communications and public relations.
Good morning. I'm Karin Mangeni from the Media Council of Kenya, Communications Department.
Good morning. I'm Elizabeth Ndolo, a member of the Law Society of Kenya.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Steve Mogere. I work for the BAC Engineering, formerly from JICA. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Juliet Chelimo, and I work with the European Union.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kizito Jamon. I work with the European Union.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Judy Mora from Kora.
Good morning. My name is John Cheboy. I'm head of public communications at Kenya Urban Roads Authority.
Good morning. My name is Engineer Jennifer Korir, representing Institution of Engineers of Kenya, where I'm the honorary treasurer. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Enid Grace Anono. I am the CEO of Matatu Owners Association. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Stephen Jogu from Kenya Urban Roads Authority.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Esther Karori from State Department of Roads, Public Communication Officer.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mercy Ndomi, an attaché at the State Department of Roads, Communications Department.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joy Anjamotoni from the State Department of Roads, Public Communication Office.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Evelyn Wanjiko from State Department of Roads, an attaché at the Public Communication Office.
Good morning. My name is Philip Dyke. I'm with Everstrong Capital. We're the proponents of the Usahihi Nairobi to Mombasa public-private partnership.
Morning, everyone. My name is Gary Mathu with Everstrong Capital. Morning, everybody. My name is Dr. Jose Akili, the Group Managing Director of CPF Pensions Group, and also the President of Association of Pension Schemes, the Trust Trustees and Administrators, but also here as the Chairman of the Committee of Experts dealing with PPP matters.
Good morning. My name is Jeffrey Odundo. I'm the Group Executive Advisor at CPF and also a Transaction Advisor for Everstroke Capital. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Peterson from the PS office.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Engineer Michael Jiang. I represent IK. I'm chair of the task force, roads and transport, but I've been in the sector for some time at Nairobi Metropolitan Services with the General Body in Nairobi and also in the Ministry of Roads, Transport and Public Works.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Peter Murima, the chairperson, the Motorist Association of Kenya, the umbrella body for all vehicle owners and drivers in the country. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Engineer Daniel Chirono, Director of Maintenance at Kenya National Highways Authority.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Engineer Nicholas Musuni from the State Department for Roads.
Good morning, Alex Mbuvi, Legal Office, Ministry of Roads and Transport.
Good morning. My name is James Wanzala from the Standard newspaper.
Good morning. My name is David Gishuru from the Standard newspaper.
Good morning. Engineer Geoffrey Moindi from Engineers Board of Kenya.
Good morning, everybody. Kelvin Wambua, PPP Kenha.
Good morning. My name is Ivy Rono from Kenha.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Monica Nyambura from Kenha PPP.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tuto Mamo from PPP Kenha.
Good morning. My name is Leslie Rugumi, engineer, Kenha.
Good morning. My name is Cheriot Kirui from Kenya, PPP Directorate.
Good morning, everyone. Meshak Cherutich from Kenya.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Engineer Kelvin Nangili. I'm a senior engineer with the Nairobi Metropolitan Area Transport Authority.
Good morning, everyone. My name is James Kawai, Infrastructure Development Officer from Namata.
Good morning. My name is Karoga Mugo. I work with the Legal Office, State Department of Transport.
Good morning. My name is Julius Wambua, board member, Shippers Council of East Africa.
Hamjambo, kwa majina naitwa Agayo Ogambi. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for the Shippers Council of Eastern Africa.
Good morning, Richard Malinga, Transport Engineer with the African Development Bank.
Morning, everyone. My name is Engineer Dirima John. I'm a senior engineer at Kenya National Highways Authority.
Good morning. My name is Engineer Anthony Nganga, Assistant Director, PPP Directorate at Kenya.
Good morning. My name is Nathaniel Munga. I'm a Senior Legal Officer, PPP Kenya.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mandela Hope, Sign Language Interpreter, Kenya Institute of Special Education.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mercy Thuo. I'm the Executive Director of the Advisory Arm of CPF Group, CPF Capital and Advisory, the lead transaction advisors for the Usahihi project, and I'm also a board member of the East Africa Advisory Board for RICS, the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors. Thank you.
Good morning. Moses Cherono from PPP, National Treasury.
Good morning. I'm Kibet Kiblagat from Kenya Roads Board, representing the Director General.
Good morning. My name is Engineer Jacinta Mwangi, Acting Director, Policy Strategy and Compliance at Kenya Bandits Authority, and a member of the Technical Working Group. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Engineer Charles Obon, Director, Public-Private Partnership, Kenya National Highways Authority. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Engineer Nyakuti, Deputy Director from Kenya Roads Authority, and also a member of the Technical Working Group.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kennedy Karisa, the Secretary General of Truckers Association of Kenya.
Good morning. My name is Engineer Peter Wakahia. I'm from the Truckers Association of Kenya, where I'm the Treasurer.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Benjamin Mokua from Public Service Pension Fund.
Good morning. My name is Obedi Buthi from PSSF.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Engineer Kefa Seda, Deputy Director, PPP Kenya, and the Chair of the Technical Working Group. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Angela. I'm a videographer at KTN.
Morning, I'm Hebron Kinyoda, videographer, Citizen TV.
Good morning, I'm Morino Njiku from KTN Reporter.
Hello everyone, I'm Julia Mudhoni, reporter, Royal Media.
Hi, good morning. My name is Cynthia Nyango, reporter for Royal Media.
Hello everyone, Boniface Musioka, CJV Communications.
Good morning, everyone. Engineer Oginga is my name. I work for Kenya Urban Roads Authority as the Director in charge of Urban Roads Planning and Design. I'm also here to represent our Director General. Thank you.
Good morning, George Njao, Director General, National Transport Safety Authority.
Good morning, Engineer Dungu, DG Ghana.
Good morning, Wycliffe Ondeki, Head of Planning and Monitoring and Evaluation at the PPP Directorate, National Treasury. I'm here this morning to represent the Acting Director General of PPP, Madam Nila Wanjala. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the chief guest will formally introduce to us. And also I have one member here who has not introduced himself. We don't want to leave anybody out.
Good morning all protocol observed. I'm Shanda Kodari, sign language interpreter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Sandra, you're assuming they know you?
Good morning, my name is Sandra Dua from Kenya Communication.
All right, I believe we have not left anybody, and yours truly is Samuel Kumba, Deputy Director Communication at Kenya. Thank you very much. Now from the program, we are going to have remarks from the chief guest, and to assist us in that presentation, I'll request our Director General to welcome the PS to give his remarks. So that he makes one remark and welcomes the PS.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Kumba. I think we have seen quite a number of presentations from truck owners to matatus, to investors, to potential investors. And we are happy to have this session this morning. and we are glad that you could join us for this session. Quite a bit of work has gone on to get this tolling policy in place, and we have received quite a number of responses from the members of the public. And today we'll be validating those particular responses from the public. And so we'll have a good session. I believe there'll be discussions and maybe further questions and clarifications from the floor. And so I welcome all of us to feel at home and also to participate fully in this particular session. I'd wish to welcome our chief guest, Engineer Joseph Bogwa, PS for Roads, to make his remarks. I thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Somebody is worried it might break. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, members for the state, our team from various institutions represented here today. So Director Generals of various state corporations, leadership from various institutions, commissioners and CEOs present, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you to this forum, being the validation workshop of the updated road tolling policy, following a successful countrywide public participation conducted from 24th of February to 10th of March 2025. The intended national tolling on our road network marks the beginning of a transformational journey in the future of road infrastructure, marking a crucial step in ensuring inclusivity and transparency as we develop a policy framework that will guide the implementation of road tolling in Kenya. The government, in collaboration with road users, industry players, and other stakeholders, sought to explore road tolling in Kenya as a viable option for road development and maintenance, given the ever-expanding infrastructure network and shrinking finance basket. Ladies and gentlemen, during the public participation exercise, the Ministry of Roads and Transport conducted extensive consultation with the stakeholders, including government players, private sector players, transport association, civil society organizations, marginalized groups, local communities, financial institutions, development partners, community leaders, and the general public. The participation was facilitated through the physical forums across 8 regions, namely Nairobi, Central, Northeastern, Rift Valley, Coast, Eastern, West, and Nyanza, that were representative of the geographical and demographical aspect of our country. The team also held a widely consultation, virtually meeting, and also sought and received written submissions from interested partners. Ladies and gentlemen, the stakeholder engagement process successfully gathered variable inputs that shaped the enhancement of this policy content. From our field reports, the following issues stood out: on concerns on implementation of public implementation and public burden, these concerns included fear that tolling would increase the cost of transportation, affecting goods and services, concerns that tolling may disproportionately affect low-income users, road users, and small businesses. Requests for a clear implementation network, including alternative routes for non-toll payers. Under the need for transparency and accountability, these concerns bordered on the following: demand for clarity on toll revenue management, ensuring funds are invested into road maintenance and expansion, need for public disclosure of toll rates and revision mechanisms. Under infrastructure and service quality considerations, we had complaints on existing poor road conditions, with stakeholders questioning the justification for additional charges, call for improved road safety measures, including street lighting, signage, and emergency response services. On alternative funding mechanism, the following concerns were raised: proposals to explore fuel levies, vehicle registration fees, or congestion charges as alternatives, calls for a phased implementation with pilot projects before full-scale rollout. On equity and regional balance, the following concerns emerged: concerns that tolling would create disparities, favoring regions with better roads while marginalized areas remain undeveloped. Requests for equitable toll distribution to avoid overburdening certain regions on highways. Need for government investment in alternative transport modes, that is railway, BRT, and non-motorized transport infrastructure. Ladies and gentlemen, as the Ministry of Roads and Transport, having received feedbacks from public, we have agreed to the following: commit to ensuring affordability by setting reasonable toll rates and exploring subsidies where necessary. Assure that all revenue will be reinvested for road development and maintenance. Engage continuously with the stakeholders to refine the tolling framework and address any further concerns that may arise. Strengthen public-private partnership to enhance road infrastructure while minimizing the burden on taxpayers. Launch pilot tolling projects on selected highways to assess visibility before nationwide implementation. Ladies and gentlemen, the ministry has incorporated these key recommendations and will enhance transparency, fairness, and inclusivity in the intended road tolling model. The government commits to ensure proper oversight of toll revenue, continuous stakeholders engagement, and the implementation of sustainable road financing solutions for the implementation of development infrastructure across all regions of the country. The development of this revised national tolling policy has been a collaborative effort involving multiple stakeholders. I wish to thank this technical working group comprising of officers from the key government ministries and agencies for their relentless effort and work well done in preparing this revised national policy. As I also wish to thank all who participated in these tolling policy workshops across the country, and also those that also aired some of their concerns through the soft media. So this morning, it is my desire that all of us will participate fully in validating the outcome of the stakeholders' public participation report that we have today to ensure that this project of enhancing our tolling policy in our country becomes a success. I thank you all and wish you a very fruitful engagement in this meeting. Thank you so much.
Asante sana katibu wetu, na wakati uliopita tulijifunza kidogo kwamba mamlaka barabara kuu nchini ina makofi ya kipekee ambayo ni makofi yanayokubalika kimazingira, na ningependa hayo makofi tumpe katibu wetu, nayo tunayaita 3 factorial, meaning 1 2 3 1 2 then 1. Kwa hivyo 1 2 3 tumshukuru katibu. 1 2 3. Tumekosea, nimesema environment friendly clubs, namna hiyo. Tuko pamoja? Haya, 1 2 3. Basi sadaka kabisa. Sasa ukisikia umependezwa na neno pale, hayo ndio makofi tunayabwaga kwa msemaji. Na ningependa kumfahamisha mgeni wetu rasmi kwamba ili jopo lilipoelekea pale mashinani, kulikuwa na mambo matatu ambayo yaliwatimiza. Moja ni kwamba wale wananchi ambao walijitokeza kwanza walijifunza kwa mambo ya ili sera ambalo limependekezwa. Pili, walimakinika kidijitali kiasi kwamba walifahamishwa kwamba wanaweza kusoma sera kwa mtandao. Pia wakapewa anwani ya barua pepe na wakaelezwa tofuti ambayo wanaweza tembelea kisha wapate sera na waisome peke yao. Na kadhalika walijivinjari. Kwa hivyo kwamba tukiwa na mikutano kama hii pia ni fursa kujivinjari, maana hakuna la kuhuzunisha. Hivyo ndivyo mwelekeo ambao tulifuata pale mashinani. Na kiasi kwamba jopo lilijifunza jambo moja, kwamba ili kufahamisha wananchi basi hawangeweza kutumia lugha ya Kimombo sehemu zingine. Ikawa kwamba walijikakamua wakaweza kueleza hii sera kwa lugha ya Kiswahili, na pia tulifanikiwa kuitafsiri sera yenyewe kwa hiyo lugha ya Kiswahili. Kadhalika kwa wale wenzetu ambao wana maumbile tofauti, basi kuna wenzetu ambao waliwaeleza kwa lugha ambao wanaelewa bila mwenzetu anafanya hapa kwa sign language. Kadhalika kuna wale ambao ni vipofu, ikawa lazima tumeichapisha hii sera kwa lugha ambao wanaweza kuisoma. Pia tuko nayo hapa katika braille, ili kwamba hakuna mtu ambaye tulimwacha nyuma. Kwa hivyo hata nikienda kumuita mwenzetu aweze kutueleza kwa hii sera, ustajabu kwamba pia yeye atachanganya lugha. Ameisoma sasa kaimanya, kwa hivyo anachanganya lugha ya Kimombo, anaijua pia lugha ya Kiswahili anaifahamu, kiasi kwamba atatuelezea. Alifanikiwa sana kutofautisha kati ya utoaji wa ada na kodi, maana watu wengi walisema sasa hivi bwana ni kodi ya mara mbili. Basi akaelezea kwamba si kodi bali ni ada, kiasi kwamba kwa ada uamuzi ni wako, lakini kwa kodi hauna hiari, lazima uilipe. Kwa hivyo ningependa kumwalika mwenyekiti wa jopo, mhandisi Kefa, atuelezee yale ambayo tumebadilisha kwa hii sera, kisha tutakuwa na fursa ya kuchangia. Karibu sana.
Asante sana mwenzangu Bwana Kumba, pia tuweze kumpatia ile tunasemaje, ulisemaje? Makofi ile ya kimazingira, sio? Tumpatie 3, sio? 1 2 3. Asanteni sana. Vile nilivyoweza kujitambulisha kwa majina, mimi naitwa mhandisi Kefa Seda, na hudumu pale Kenya kama Deputy Director in charge of PPP, na kwa sasa mimi ndio mwenyekiti wa hili jopo ambalo limeweza kuliandaa hili sera. Allow me also to accommodate our colleagues who are not able to understand Kiswahili. My name is Engineer Kefa Seda. I'm a Deputy Director in charge of PPP at Kenya, and also the chair to the technical work group that has processed this particular policy that will form part of our discussion today. Now I'll make some few remarks before I get into my presentation, and allow me to appreciate our chief guest for the day, our PS Engineer Joseph Mbogwa, for gracing this occasion. DG's present, CEOs present. Allow me also to acknowledge my chair of the committee of experts who are trying to put together documentation that will also see how pension funds, both institutional and retail, will invest in some of the investment projects that we have in Kenya. We also have our development partners from different institutions. We have investors, our stakeholders. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Before I start, allow me to acknowledge the technical work group who managed to prepare this particular document that will form the basis of our discussion today. So if you could just be upstanding with the permission of the PS just for 1 minute for people to see you. I'm just their mouthpiece to present what they came up with, the technical work group. If you could stand up just for 1 minute, then I'll progress with the presentation. So this particular technical work group comprised of different professionals from different ministries and institutions, as you've heard. We have representations from the Attorney General's office, that is Afisi ya Mwanasheria Mkuu. We have representations from the National Treasury. We have representations from KENA, KURA, KERA, Kenya Roads Boards, and NTSA. I hope I've not left out. Please, you can take your seat. So as you've heard, this is our second or third engagement, depending on the level of engagements we had. We started this process in 2024, where we called some of you into a room, discussed with you the first draft which we had. And after discussing that draft, we went now for the wider public participation. And as CS has indicated to us, the public participation was conducted in the whole country, and it was done with 4 teams. We also did acknowledge that during the physical meetings, not everybody would attend, and therefore, come 13th of this March, we also organized for a virtual session where we also engaged with the public just to sensitize them on this particular policy document. And as a matter of requirement in law and process, after engaging in the initial stakeholders engagement and after conducting public participation, we are supposed to convene again with our original stakeholders, walk you through the sort of recommendations that we've received in the public and how they've been addressed in this particular document, and see what if that would work for you. And if that is okay, then this particular document will now go to Cabinet for processing, and thereafter it will go through the parliamentary process, where still you will still be afforded a chance to voice your concern, if any, on this particular policy document. So with that, I'll now go into the presentation. I believe it's something that you've interacted with before. So I'll gloss over some of the slides, because it's not the first time we'll be presenting to us. However, if you've got a concern or a question, please note it down during the plenary session. We'll be able to take them and address them, address your concerns accordingly. Also, I'll also be able to highlight the key issues that we got from the public and how we've managed to address them in this particular document. And lastly, we have prepared a report detailing the public participation process, the sort of concerns that came in, and it will be a public document once we transmit to the Parliament for it to be processed, and it's something that will be accessed. So for those of you who are not with us or who are not privy, this particular document is available at the ministry's website, that is www.transport.go.ke. That is the original version that we published before we went for the public participation. After this particular exercise, we'll also be able to publish it again for purposes of accessibility and you going through. So thank you very much. So just to lay context on what I'll be walking you through this morning, I'll just give you the introductory bit of it. Then I'll be able to lay context by taking you through the road infrastructure demand, also through road safety, through the funding deficit that we have as a government. I'll also walk you through the government interventions that we've managed to put in place, just to lay context. Then lastly, I'll walk you through the success story that we have, and that is the Nairobi Expressway project. Then I'll walk you through the rationale for this particular policy and the benefits that will accrue to the public. Then we'll dive into what are the policy objectives and the principles that will govern this particular policy document. Then we'll take a deep dive into the implementation framework. And after that, we'll go into the monitoring and evaluation framework just to see how we'll monitor these particular policies to ensure compliance and to ensure that we are achieving the objectives that have been set for it. And lastly, I'll just walk you through the roadmap. That is, from today, once this validation workshop has happened, what are the next steps until we adopt this particular policy. Then lastly, I'll just let you appreciate the silent matters that came from the public and the sort of recommendations that the committee has made for further processing. So on the introductory bit, as a country we have a vision, isn't it? As a country, we have laid path which we want to walk through and achieve. And all these are encapsulated in the Vision 2030 goals that we have. The same is also in our bottom-up economic transformational agenda, which we are all privy to. For us to realize our vision, we need funding. And funding is a major constraint that we all appreciate and we know as a country. It's in the public domain. And therefore, we need to think of alternative financing mechanisms for us to have our infrastructure, given that under our blueprint, infrastructure is one of the pillars towards the realization of the Vision 2030 goals. So there's a significant funding gap to address development, maintenance, and rehabilitation of our infrastructure. This is also worsened by the severe backlog we have on our maintenance needs. And if at all we continue with the status quo, then we may not achieve our dream as a country. Back in the year 2014-2015, we did a study, we did a survey under the National Surface Transport Funding Policy. And there are quite a number of proposals that were put in place for us to realize or to have our infrastructure in place. And one of the avenues where was proposed for us to realize funding was to increase the fuel levy. Two was introduction of tolls on some of our roads. The other one was to capitalize on the polluter pay principle. As your vehicle pollutes the environment, then there's a premium attached to it for you to pay. And that would go towards financing our road infrastructure projects. And lastly, there was an insurance premium tax for purposes of also maintaining our road infrastructure. And pursuant to this study, we came up with a draft tolling policy that was way back in 2016. This policy was never processed, and therefore it was never approved. And that's why this committee came into play, and just not to reinvent the wheel, but to work on the draft that was already in place in 2016. And this is what we'll be presenting to you today. So this particular policy has been developed consistent with the integrated national transport policy, together with the policy that I've mentioned, that is the National Surface Transport Funding Policy, and presents to us how tolls will be applied to fund our road infrastructure expenditures. Looking at the road infrastructure demand, we all do appreciate that most of our existing road, the traffic sort of demand has outstretched the capacities. And this is prevalent on our northern corridor, Nairobi, let me say Mombasa, Nairobi, Nakuru, Mau Summit, Eldoret, all the way to Malaba. It's also predominant in some of our road corridors, at River Namanga, Kisumu, Busia, Nairobi, Karen, Ngong, and also the recently upgraded road, Nairobi, Thika, Nyeri, amongst others. This has led to increased travel times due to congestion, unstable driving conditions, high wear and tear that is caused on the road, leading to increased cost of maintenance and high vehicle operating cost. And lastly, it has also increased to a number of road accidents in our, along our corridors. Therefore, this calls for higher frequency of maintenance and rehabilitation, expansion and upgrade of our major road corridors. Just for us to appreciate what we are talking about, this is Nairobi, Nakuru, Summit, Eldoret Road. I do appreciate many of us use this particular road. Maybe some of you have spent nights on this particular road just because the existing capacity is exceeded, looking at the traffic demand or the traffic volume. Similarly, along the same corridor, you can easily tell the number of vehicles are too many. They've exited the two-lane single carriageway that we have. And in one of the media reports, there was something talking about Athi River Namanga Road, where residents wanted the Namanga Road expanded to curb road carnage and traffic jams. Just for us also to appreciate, and I'm happy that representatives from the Shippers Council of East Africa are here. They did undertake a survey way back in 2020. And they did a comparison between the central corridor, that is the Dar es Salaam Kampala, and our northern corridor, that is Mombasa Kampala, where it was established that for you to use, for the freight traffic, that is truckers, for them to use the central corridor, the cost is at 1.85 USD per container per kilometer, which translates to 241 Kenya shillings. While on the northern corridor, it was pegged at 1.8 US dollar per container per kilometer, which translates to 244. We need to do something because this is our major artery. Also, when they looked at the truck turnaround time, it is approximately 2 hours along the central corridor, which means they move faster, they drop their goods and go back within 2 hours, as compared to our northern corridor where we take 5.5 hours. And therefore, this also speaks to the need for us to expand our corridor so that we can increase on some of these parameters. On average, looking globally, trucks cover around 12,000 kilometers per month. And if you look at East Africa, it ranges between 5,000 to 7,500 kilometers per month. That also speaks to the need for us to do something about our road corridors. So based on this logistic performance survey, it recommended investment into our road infrastructure, as improvement in this area will double travel speeds, increase trip frequency, and significantly reduce costs. Therefore, that report recommended that Kenya also improves on the virtual way bridges to minimize on stops along the northern corridor. On the road safety front, and I'm happy that the DG at TSA is here, seems he's left, we have over 4,000 road fatalities on an annual basis. This is based on data that NTSA have, and this is only the recorded numbers. Injuries and others could even be higher than this 4,000 number we're talking about today. So the road risk factors that have been found to cause these crashes and injuries in some of our major road ranges from speeding, careless driving, fatigue, and fatigue occasioned by you've been working for 8 hours. After the 8 hours, you get into the road, you spend how many hours again? Maybe 3 hours, 4 hours for you to go home. That increases the level of fatigue after working. Inadequate road carrying capacity, which I've spoken to based on the pictorials that I've shared with us, environmental conditions, inadequate funding for maintenance and vehicle conditions, amongst others. Therefore, the enhancement of road carrying capacity has been shown to significantly reduce road accidents. And as an example that we have, and many of you can attest, is expansion that we did between Kenol and Sagana Marwa, whereby the road accident has dropped significantly. This is just a pictorial for us to appreciate the sort of road carnages and crashes that we have. Apologies though to those who might have been affected in one way or the other. Then on the funding deficit, as it stands today, we have a road network of 239,122 kilometers. The classified network being 164,966, while unclassified stands at 74,155 kilometers. This is according to the Road Inventory Condition Survey that was conducted in 2023. This means that the 69% of Kenya's road network, that is the 164,966 kilometers, is what is only eligible for funding under the RMLF, leaving the other chunk of 31%, that is 74,000 kilometers. For the government to enhance connectivity and maintain the 69% of the road network, the required budget over the 10 years, that is forward-looking, is 5.146 trillion. However, the available budget for development stands at 1.096 trillion. We also had a study that was undertaken on the economic impact on e-mobility on RMLF, that is way back in 2023, which painted a picture that the current road network requires around 253 billion Kenya shillings, while the RMLF projected collection was at 100 billion shillings. We can clearly see what the deficit is from the RMLF funding. Further, there is a maintenance backlog estimated at 500 billion, besides the damages that normally occur on an annual basis due to rainfall, heavy rainfall. Therefore, with the financial constraints on the exchequer, RMLF cannot sustain maintenance of a road network in the long term due to lack of regular indexation on the fuel levy rates to inflation. Many of us do appreciate that the fuel levy rate that was being applied upon consumption of fuel was at 18 shillings. And it was at 18 shillings at the longest, not taking into consideration inflation. We also have improved vehicle fuel efficiencies. We started with the carburetors, we are in EFIs, now we are on hybrid. That means fuel consumption is also doing what? Reducing. We also have now the full EV vehicles, electric vehicles. That means fuel consumptions will significantly drop with an increase in volume of EV vehicles. And therefore, we need to do things differently. Decline in vehicle registration. This is a statistic that we got from NTSA last year. We had a drop in vehicle registration. This could be predominantly on the economic performance of the country. And therefore, unsustainability necessitates the need to adopt strategies to seek alternative funding solutions for our road maintenance programs. This is just a pictorial for us to appreciate what we require ideally for budget for purposes of maintaining and developing a road against the budgets that we normally provide. For 2017, we can appreciate it was shy of 200 billion, and what we received from the exchequer was 50 billion. And the trend has been consistent through the years, with the last that has been put on the graph, that is the financial year 2023-2024, where the ideal budget required for purposes of our road infrastructure was slightly above 300 billion, but what we received from the exchequer was just slightly above 50 billion. Just for us to depict where we are as a country, our needs outweighs zile rasilimali ambazo tunazo. Mahitaji tunazo kama nchi ni mzito zaidi kushinda rasilimali ambazo tunazo kama nchi. Ndio maana tunaweza kueleza lazima tutafute njia mbadala ya kufadhili ujenzi na kukarabati mabarabara zetu. So for us to appreciate the sort of government interventions that have been put in place, government has attempted to expand some of the key high traffic corridors through its own revenue source, through borrowings from bilateral and multilateral lenders, the likes of AFDB, EU, JICA, and World Bank, just to name a few. However, the continued reliance on borrowing has become unsustainable, as the government has exceeded its debt borrowing ceiling, with the current debt to GDP ratio standing at 67%. And the government intention is to reduce this debt to GDP ratio to 55% by 2028, so that we can go back to sustainable limits of borrowing. The Exchequer and RMLF are currently the major sources of financing for road development and maintenance. However, given the current budgetary constraints and the projected decline on RMLF due to adoption of e-mobility, amongst other reasons, other sources of financing needs to be explored. The government has therefore explored alternative financing mechanisms such as public-private partnerships, that's PPP, and considered tolling as a viable funding mechanism for road construction in major corridors. When we talk about tolling, it's not necessarily that it be PPP. Government can strategically decide to toll particular roads on its own. We have this happening in Japan, we have this happening in Korea, we have this happening in South Africa. Because when you bring out private sector, their focus is on bottom line, isn't it? As opposed to government, when they do tolling, where their focus would be on service delivery. So we might have instances where government strategically adopts particular roads for purposes of tolling, and where necessary, we outsource to private sector. And these will be negotiated so that they don't capitalize on profits, which is normally their focus. So for us to appreciate Nairobi Expressway, and this we did deliberately because we were going to Mashinani so that the Wanjiko down there can appreciate. I know many of us have interacted with the Nairobi Expressway, and we don't really need to emphasize on the benefits of Nairobi Expressway. Many of us who would use Mombasa Road before Nairobi Expressway came into being, it would take 3 to 4 hours to cross between Nairobi from Mlolongo and exit in Westlands. But today, we are talking of a success story where you can only spend 25 minutes between Mlolongo and Westlands. And this is what we want to replicate elsewhere. And as we're talking about tolling, we are not going to toll the entire road network in the country. It's going to be to specific road corridors. So looking at the success story, the implementation of Nairobi Expressway project through PPP has demonstrated the value of road tolling as a form of infrastructure financing through the following ways: improved functionality, reduced travel time, which I spoke to, enhanced road safety, improved incident management. How many of you have ever suffered and your vehicle stalls on Nairobi Expressway? There could be a few of us. What happens? The operator of Nairobi Expressway has surveillance mechanisms to detect such kind of incidents. And they've got a contracted response time through which they need to respond to such kind of incidents and clear to enhance traffic flow. And this is also what we want to replicate. Whenever there are accidents, they have a detection time, they respond to it, you see an ambulance, you see the response unit, they come with the police, clear the accident scene, and let traffic flow. These are some of things we want to replicate on our toll roads, which will be selected. And lastly, on traffic flow, improved level of service. Pictorials, allow me to skip this because I know many of you have also used the expressway this morning. Ama kuna wale who don't know expressway. So these are just pictorials which we used to explain to Wanjiko, who have not interacted with the Nairobi Expressway, for them to see how it looks like. So the rationale for tolling and the benefits to the public. Rationale, one, is to improve on the quality of service and safety enhancement. Two, act as an additional source of revenue for purposes of developing, maintaining, and rehabilitating our road infrastructure. And three, to act as a congestion management mechanism through congestion pricing. The benefits that would accrue to the public: improved connectivity that will stimulate socioeconomic growth, enhanced road safety and reduced accidents, enhanced quality of life. Remember, we spoke about earlier about driver fatigue as one of the causes of road accidents. So through this, we do believe that it will enhance quality of life. We'll also have improved emergency response time, as indicated on the success story on Nairobi Expressway, enhance environmental sustainability by reducing carbon emission, and lastly, alleviation of burden placed on GOK Exchequer, because we will be capitalizing on private financing, and the sort of funding that would now fund whatever has been the initial outlay will be through revenues generated through the project. Now, we've spoken to the public. We spoke to you. And there is an appreciation or a misconception that toll is a tax. And therefore, as a committee, we decided to help us appreciate and understand the difference between a toll and a tax. Tax, by definition, is a mandatory or a compulsory extraction of money by a public authority for public purposes enforceable by law. While tolls, these are fees collected for a specific service rendered or benefit conferred. If you don't use a toll road, you don't pay for it. Taxes are mandatory and apply to the broader public. Tolls are only applicable to the road user at the point of entry and exit, and it's based on usage. Taxes are consolidated and applied by the government to different sectors, while tolls are collected from that specific road, plowed back to that specific road for further investments, except where there are surpluses. And where there are surpluses, if this particular policy goes through, it will help in cross-subsidizing other road infrastructure projects within the country. And lastly, taxes are abstract in the immediate benefit to the payer. You pay it, haujui itaenda kukufaidi wapi, sio? Government will go sit down, consolidate it, then based on the projects that have been identified, that's when they'll be applied to. So it's more or less like the benefit is deferred, while tolls are transparent in relation to the service provided. You consume the service, you benefit. Many times you benefit even before you pay, isn't it? Because if you talk about an example of expressway, you pick your ticket, drive through it, you consume the service, then at the point of exit, that's when you do what? You pay for it. On the policy objectives, and this policy will address 5 key objectives. And the first objective is to provide guiding principles for the selection, planning, prioritizing, and funding of toll roads projects in readiness for tolling. And such roads shall not be eligible for RMLF funding. So if we identify Nairobi Mombasa to be a toll road, then it will have to be dropped from the list of projects that benefits from RMLF. And therefore, we'll be putting a relief on the RMLF to go and benefit other parts of the road network. Remember, we mentioned 31% of our road network are not candidates for funding RMLF. So we'll onboard such a project as we offload some of the projects into the tolling program. 2 is to act as a new, stable, and dedicated alternative source of funding for development, maintenance, and rehabilitation of the toll roads, and as a cross-subsidy for different parts of the road network in order to enhance the quality of country's road network. So we'll collect tolls, we develop the road, collect this money. So if the money is sufficient to offset the investment, together with the financing cost, and we realize surpluses, then those surpluses, based on the approval by the cabinet secretary responsible for roads, so such surpluses can be used to improve other road networks within the country. 3, to facilitate and encourage private sector investments in road infrastructure development, operations and maintenance in order to alleviate the financial burden on the public sector. And that's why we have representatives from NSSF, CPF to hear this. We want to establish a framework that will encourage you to invest on a long-term basis on our infrastructure projects. And this is not only in the road sector. Number 4, to ensure effective governance, transparency, fairness, and sustainability. As we are going out to the public, there is a major trust deficit on government. And therefore, we want to lay a foundation on this framework that would enhance or will ensure effective governance, would create transparency, fairness, and sustainability in toll road operations in order to build public trust and acceptability to tolling. And lastly, to provide safer roads, effective and efficient road tolling system in a way as a way of decongesting urban centers, reducing carbon emissions, and reducing accidents. So those are the 5 objectives that this particular policy is set to achieve. Now, on the policy principles, these would form decisions as we implement tolling. There'll be reference decision points. And the first principle is on cost recovery. Toll rates should be set to recover cost of development and or operations and or maintenance of road in a sustainable manner by ensuring affordability, and therefore such roads shall not also be eligible for RMLF funding. Remember, we've put and or for this reason. If at all it's an infrastructure on our asset that has already been put into place, then the cost recovery will not go towards the provision of that infrastructure. That is the investment or the development cost. So what will only apply for purposes of cost recovery will only be on maintenance and rehabilitation. Fairness and equity as a principle, tolling should be implemented fairly by ensuring that different user groups are treated equitably. So depending on your damage factor on the road, the number of times, these are the type of parameters we'll use to come up with the toll tariff. Therefore, the tariff for a small car will be different from the tariff for a bus, and will be different from the tariff for trucks. So it will be graduated depending on the passenger car units or the damaging factor that we use under our roads manual. Value proposition, for us to implement toll on a particular corridor, the user must perceive value in paying the toll. We cannot start today to implement toll on Nairobi Thika because we know the sort of challenges that are there. We cannot implement toll on a road that suffers congestions or is unsafe. There has to be a demonstrable value that a road user would get. And this could be from a timing perspective, travel time. It could be from a vehicle operating cost. If you used to use 4,000, we've reduced your travel time, you can move faster. So instead of using 4,000, you'll be using 2,000 for purposes of taking your journey. Toll-free alternatives. It will not be mandatory for government to provide a dedicated toll-free alternative, but appropriate measures will be taken to guarantee affordability through subsidies and discounts. Here what we are saying, tunaenda kwa mfumo wa kulipa ada kwa matumizi ya barabara kwa sababu serikali ina changamoto za kifedha, sio? The government has challenges when it comes to budget. When we force government that it has to do a dedicated and parallel toll-free alternative, what are we doing? One, the first financial impact will be on acquisition of that particular greenfield for us to undertake the project. Cost of land today, we know it's not cheap. Government doesn't have that money. Two, when you construct a parallel, adjacent, toll-free alternative, we all know ourselves as Kenyans. What will happen? You'll go to maybe the toll road, consume the services, come the point where you're supposed to interact with the toll stations, you divert to the toll-free alternative. And this is something that we don't want. So what we are trying to say here, if government can demonstrate to the public, to Mwanjiko and the road users, that you can easily move from point A to point B, then it should not be forced to provide a dedicated parallel toll-free alternative. Sio lazima serikali ipatiane njia sambamba, njia mbadala, ile ambayo hatulipi ada, ambayo iko karibu na ni sambamba na ile barabara nini ya kulipa ada. Tunaelewana? On revenue risk allocation, roads with high traffic volumes to be candidates for tolling, and where deemed feasible, revenue risks to be allocated to the toll operator or else shared. As I said earlier, we're not going to toll the entire road network. It will be select a few, and the select a few will be those highly trafficked roads. The next principle is on transparency and public acceptance. The tolling system shall be transparent with clarity about how toll rates are set, collected, and where toll revenues are allocated. On environmental considerations shall be made on the environmental and social impact of tolling. On efficiency, the tolling system should minimize congestion, streamline traffic flow, promote prudent use of the infrastructure. And here, if possible, we want to migrate to the free flow systems, where you don't interact with the physical booths. What you'll only see are gantries fitted with systems, and they communicate to us transponder which is fitted to your vehicle. And that's how you'll be paying tolls through the various wallets that will be created. The next one is on interoperability. Government will ensure interoperability between different tolling systems. We do acknowledge that right now we only have one toll road. And we do hope we'll have quite a number of projects which will be onboarded as toll roads. We don't want a situation where if you're driving from Nairobi to Mombasa, you put one gadget. When you reach Nairobi, you must have another separate gadget for you to access Nairobi Expressway. And if we have Nairobi Nakuru, we have a different operator, then you'll need a third gadget for you to access Nairobi Nakuru. So what we are saying here, we should have one system that speaks to each other. So if you start your journey from Mombasa, with that singular gadget you have in your car, you should be able to access Nairobi Mombasa, access Nairobi Expressway, and access Nairobi Nakuru. Economic viability, the tolling systems should be financially sustainable with the collected revenue covering operational costs, which should not exceed 15%. The reason why we are saying here, the first principle that we spoke about was on cost recovery. And the cost recovery speaks to recovery for investment or the development, then maintenance and rehabilitation. So what we are saying, if you have an operator, the operational cost should not go 15%, which means the balance of 85% would go to cover the cost of development, maintenance and rehabilitation of the infrastructure. Then on clearing house and dedicated toll fund, we do, as I said earlier, we might have a portfolio of toll road projects, and therefore, given that we'll have different payment platforms, you could be having visas, people paying through their debit and credit cards. We need to have a clearing house who will be receiving and reconciling the cash that comes in and channels them to now the final beneficiary of the proceeds. Then on auxiliary services, where commercially viable, a toll operator can develop auxiliary services. This could be the form of roadside stations, which have gas stations, motels, restaurants, and restrooms, which would be generating revenue to the project. Inclusivity and diversity, the government will promote fair treatment and full participation of all people, especially the marginalized one. And here, persons living with disability will be accommodated. The sort of infrastructure that will be provided for purposes of interacting with this particular road will also accommodate them. And lastly, on local content, the government will endeavor to, and as far as reasonably applicable, promote the use and acquisition of local content. Then on the legal and regulatory framework, allow me not to go through this. The umbrella framework that speaks to this particular one is the Constitution. Then we have quite a number of legal instruments that would be applicable, from the Public Finance Management Act through PPP Act, Public Roads Toll Act of 1984, which was amended through the Finance Act of 2020. We have the National Toll Fund Regulations, which is embedded on the Public Finance Management Act. We have the PPP regulations. We have the Draft Kenya Roadside Stations Regulations. We have the Traffic Act, CAP 403, East Africa Community Vehicle Load Control Act of 2016, Kenya Roads Act, and the Government Support Mechanism Policy of 2018. On the institutional framework, we have the Ministry of Roads, we have the National Treasury, we have county governments who also manage some of the roads, we have the Office of the Attorney General, we have road agencies from KRB, KENA, KURA, KERA, and KWS. We have toll operator, who may be either a public or a private entity. Then we have the enforcement and regulatory entities. That is the National Police Service, Insurance Regulatory Authority, and the National Transport and Safety Authority. And there's a good reason as to why we brought the category number 7. Because for us to fully enforce free flow or electronic systems, we'll have to have mechanisms to enforce toll violations. People will use a toll road and in one way or the other fail to pay. And that's why we have the police service, we have the Insurance Regulatory Authority, and NCSA. Through these platforms, if you fail to pay, because what we are attempting to do is to have a database of all drivers and all vehicles with NTSA, such that if you violate, you will be flagged at NTSA. And if you're flagged at NTSA, the corresponding institutions where you'll go secure your driving license, vehicle inspections will also flag you as well. So when you go renew your vehicle license, you'll also be flagged until you pay. Because all we want to do is to decriminalize toll violation, which as it stands today is a criminal offense under the Public Roads Toll Act of 1984 with the amendments of 2020. Then lastly, as the institutional framework, we have the judiciary. So quite a number of proposed amendments on the legal and institutional framework. And first is, in the short term, given that we want to implement tolling, we do have a directorate within one of the road agencies mandated with the design, construction, and rehabilitation and maintenance to take lead in the management of toll roads. We can also strategically engage or outsource a private toll operator to help us in management of our toll roads. Also, we have amendments on the existing pieces of legislation to support government's tolling business. The fourth one, which I've spoken to, is to decriminalize toll violations for mandatory toll settlement of tolls through various platforms. When you're going to renew your driving license, when you're going for vehicle inspection, and when you're going for insurance renewals. We also want to decriminalize overloading, similar to what we've done along the Northern Corridor, which is currently under the East Africa Community Vehicle Load Control Act of 2016. And in the long term, government to consider establishing a commercial entity that will be purely mandated to provide the asset and manage the toll roads. Because when we mandate such kind of an institution, their focus will not be on profit. Because many a times, even from the public participation, what we've had the public say, why would we focus on the private sector? Because all they want to come is to reap Kenyans of their money. And this is not what we want. We want to be very strategic. This is something that has been implemented elsewhere or is being implemented elsewhere. As it stands today, there are strategic corridors that South Africa is managing as an institution, as a government. And there are those that they've chosen to be outsourced to private sector. If you go to Japan, many of their toll roads are being managed by government entities, depending on the province or the region. Similarly, you go to Korea, we got Korea Expressway Corporation. If you have a chance, you can try, do a research. They manage most of the Koreans' road network. And what they do as a government institution, you start with a toll road, you have your projections as revenues that will coming in. What you do, you securitize those revenues. And when you securitize those revenues, you get money to go do what? Implement other toll roads. And that's how you increase your portfolio, and you also increase the road network. Not just increasing, but the quality. in terms of level of service. So the proposal is to have a national tolling corporation in the long run, and this will be a subsidiary for one of the roads authorities, and it will be responsible for management of the toll routes. On the implementation framework, one, selection of toll roads. Remember I said we are not going to toll the entire road network. We are only going to toll select few. And the select few must meet the parameters that I'm going to present to us. And one, allow me to read the chapeau, which says, tolls will only be introduced on roads which require user charges to be financially viable and either are newly constructed road or crossings. This can be a bridge or any other infrastructure involving other modes of transport. That's a criteria for selecting a toll road. Two, have been improved relative to their previous standard. Three, are of higher quality than untolled roads, for example, offering multiple lanes or heightened safety modifications. Or lastly, may not have been recently improved, provided there's a clear rationale which is consistent with criterion ABC, the three that I've spoken with, and further with the policy objectives and principle. On the tolling systems, we shall have an established efficient tolling system that will apply to all toll operators. Remember I spoke about having a singular platform or system for tolling. The tolling infrastructure should be reliable, should be scalable, should be interoperable. I spoke about interoperability on all toll roads and will be compatible to the national tolling system. Until a suitable free-flowing system is implemented, roads identified for tolling will be tolled by way of conventional charging points, where you pay cash. You can pay through your debit or credit cards or through the prepaid payment systems that have been put in place. The design and location of toll charging points will be determined based on the characteristics of each individual road and the need to maximize revenue. On toll tariffs, toll tariffs will be based on assessment of ile ada, ndio tuweze kujua ni pesa ngapi mtaweza kulipa. Kuna vitu ambavyo tutaweza kuzingatia, tuangalie, ndio tuweze kutuambia ni nini wale ambao wanatumia barabara wataweza kulipa kama ada. Na mojawapo ya zile vitu ambazo tutaweza kuangazia ni ile gharama ya ujenzi. Gharama ya ujenzi na gharama ya kukarabati barabara. So kwa hivyo kama kutakuwa na gharama ya ujenzi, kile ambacho tutaweza kuzingatia ni gharama ya kufanya nini? Ya kukarabati. What I'm saying, the first criteria that we'll use for purposes of coming up with a toll tariff will be the cost of developing, maintaining and rehabilitating the road. So if at all the infrastructure is already in place, what will be considered will only be the maintenance and rehabilitation costs together with financing. That means the development costs would already have been done what? Offset. Which means the resultant toll tariff will be much lower compared to a situation where we have to develop and maintain. We'll also have to do a willingness to pay survey. Willingness to pay survey entails the responsible institution going out into the road corridor and administering survey to the road users. Ukiwauliza, mtalipa, ungependa kulipa, depending on the service that you'll get, how much are you willing to pay, depending also on your pocket. It's not just a number that the government will come with and push it through to the road users. We have to undertake a survey. Survey and administer it to truckers, administer it on matatus, administer it on the private cars. Then we come back and do our mathematics. Remember, the first one was on the cost of development and maintenance. So based on the feedback that we will receive, we'll have to now see how to rationalize the development costs and what people are willing to part with. 3, evidence regarding user benefits. Remember, one of the cardinal principles that would guide the implementation of tolling is user perceived value. So what will be the value that would accrue to the road user or to the public? That would also be considered that is coming through with the the sort of tariff that people will pay. We'll also look at the availability of alternative routes. And that's why we spoke about mechanisms speaking to subsidy and discounts. If at all there'll be no alternative routes for people to use, then government will institute measures such as subsidy and discounts so that the toll that will be in place will be something that is affordable and something that can attract users to use that particular corridor. We'll also look at revenues generated from the auxiliary facilities. As I said, auxiliary facilities, we might have motels, we might have restaurants, we might have restrooms, we might have gas stations. So all those will be consolidated as income to the project, and that will also help us in reducing on the toll tariff. The following shall also be considered: the impact of different vehicle types. Remember we spoke about fairness and equity? So we'll also look at the impact of different vehicles. So, and that's why I say trucks, most of the articulated trucks, will pay differently from Mugukumi, and they'll pay differently from buses, and they pay differently from the small matatus and even the small cars. It will be on a graduated scale depending on the damaging factor the vehicle have on the road. So for example, if the small car will be paying 3 shillings, this is purely an example, then we'll have matatus paying, for example, graduated by 1.5, it comes to 4.5 shillings per kilometer. Then Mugukumi might pay 3 times that. That takes us to, we started with 3 bob, so Mugukumi times 3, that's 9 bob. Then the large trucks that inflated, zile zinavuruta, they'll pay times 5. Sure. That's just purely as an illustration. Then we'll also look at the external impact of road use. These would also include congestion and pollution, and lastly, relevant government policy objectives, including those related to balancing different modes of transport. On the toll tariff, the Cabinet Secretary responsible for roads, in consultation with the Cabinet Secretary responsible for finance, will determine the initial national reference tolls and will set a tariff card applicable to tolls. So once this policy has gone through, there's an obligation that has been put on the Cabinet Secretary responsible for roads and finance to publicize a national reference toll. And this will only be done once a survey has been conducted along our corridors. And remember, they'll take into consideration what they 5 for 6 parameters, whether there is development cost, maintenance cost, whether there is user perceived value, willingness to pay, touching on affordability from your pocket. Then deviation from the national reference tolls are permitted as long as there's sufficient justification and should be approved by the Cabinet Secretary responsible for roads. Toll rates will be subject to quarterly reviews based on inflation and foreign currency shifts. So kama uchumi yetu inafanya vyema leo, that means bei ya bidhaa itakuwa imefanya nini? Imeshuka. Bei ya petroli itakuwa imefanya nini? So kwa muda wa miezi mitatu tutakuwa tunafanya reviews kwa zile tariff. So kama tariff ilipanda na sasa economy inafanya vizuri, inflation tuko sawa, zile sarafu za kigeni pia ziko sambamba, zimestabilize, so tuna adjust hizo tariff, zinafanya nini? Zinashuka. Vile vile kama uchumi itakuwa umedorora, bei ya vitu imepanda, pia yule mwekezaji si pia lazima afaidike. So tuta adjust hizo accordingly, na itakuwa inafanyika katika kipindi ya miezi mingapi? Mitatu. So baada ya kila miezi 3 tunafanya nini? Tunafanya reviews. Kama bei imeshuka tunashuka nini? Tunashukisha nini? Ile ada. Kama bei imepanda pia tunafanya nini? But it will be regulated. It will not be at the convenience of the investor, because the regulation aspect of it will be at the Ministry of Roads with the Cabinet Secretary responsible for roads. Toll tariffs for assets such as bridges, causeways, tunnels, and major crossing will be set on a project-by-project basis, because we don't know what the level of investments would be. Today we could be talking about a bridge, daraja. Hatujui ni nini kile kilichoko kule chini. So unaweza pata daraja, urefu wa daraja ni iko sawa. But in terms of investment cost, because of the ground conditions, the cost might differ significantly. And that's why we are saying, for purposes of bridge, causeways, and tunnels, let that determination be made on a project-by-project basis. Exemption from tolls. Some vehicles may be exempt from payment of tolls. This shall be approved and gazetted by the Cabinet Secretary responsible for roads, and may include military vehicles, and equipment, police vehicles and equipment, ambulances, and fire service vehicles, period. Any other vehicle will have to pay for toll. All exempt vehicles will be required to obtain and present a valid tag in order to claim the exemption. In emergency situations, military, police, ambulance, and fire engines will not be delayed even if they are not equipped with the appropriate tag. Exceptions to these exemptions may be permissible if required to meet traffic congestions or network management objectives. I believe many of us have been to the airport. There are times when you have so many airlines coming in at the same time, isn't it? And then you find at the exit where you're supposed to pay, there's quite a number of vehicles waiting to pay, and brings about congestion. And therefore you find many times they exercise discretion and do what? They lift the booms to let vehicles do what? So that's what we are talking about in that last point. Reduction in discounts where financially and economically feasible. Toll charging points will be positioned so as to avoid tolling local vehicles making short local journeys. Kama kuna market hapa, ama there's a community serving an established village somewhere closer to the road, what we are saying here, those toll charging points should be taken away from such places to allow people who are living around that place make their short journeys the way they normally do. So. Introductory of discounts for electric toll collection. Users should be considered in order to support efficient tolling systems. Some vehicles may be eligible for discounts and incentives, and which may include high occupancy vehicles. These will include both public and private vehicles on the basis of carbon or on the basis of reduction of congestion and emission. And 2, frequent users. Sasa kama wewe ni mtumizi wa barabara wa mara kwa mara, hasa tukizingatia watu wa matatu, kwa vile mnatumia barabara mara kwa mara, tutaweza kuwapatia ile discount kwa Kiswahili. Discount kwa Kiswahili. Yeah? Okay. So you'll be entitled to get discounts to encourage you use that particular road on a daily basis. Discounts will be approved by the Cabinet Secretary responsible for roads in consultation with the Cabinet Secretary responsible for finance. Still on the implementation framework, this is just for us to appreciate the sort of tariffs that are being charged in other road networks globally. For us to appreciate, there are places where they charge nearly 40 shillings per kilometer. There are places they charge as high as 120. There are places where they charge 14 shillings, but somewhere closer to where we are, starting with South Africa, where they're charging 5.68 shillings per kilometer. It drops down to Senegal, where we have the Dakar-Damniado road, toll road, where they're paying 8.8 shillings per kilometer. And lastly, we did an average of several roads within Morocco, where they're paying 6.3 shillings per kilometer. So we will not be far from what you see in Africa because of affordability and issues surrounding, let me say, willingness to pay. So as I did indicate, tolls will be subject to adjustment based on inflation and foreign currency shifts. And what we are targeting to adjust here are the operational costs, because the assumption is that the initial capital outlay, that is the investment cost, would be put in within the first 2 years. Given that PPPs and tolling can take long term, which is 30 years, and we don't know how some of the economy will perform, then we create an incentive or a mechanisms to just safeguard the investments. And therefore, if the country economy performs well, then the toll tariff, based on the adjustments, we'll have to lower the tariff. If things are that bad, then we should also allow the investors also, we should also safeguard the investors. So the initial capital outlay and our reference point will be January 2025. So the X in that formula represents the initial capital outlay. Then the adjustments on the quarterly basis will be based on consumer price indices. Now, on the FX, we may not know which currency the project will be financed. And therefore, for that particular case, we've said it will be on a project by project basis, because tomorrow you may find an investor who wants to invest on US dollar, or you'll find an investor wants to invest in Chinese yuan or Japanese yen. So that one we leave it on a project by project basis, and a formula will be provided to cushion or to safeguard those shifts. On operations, the agency responsible for toll road may outsource toll collections to a private operator to enhance efficiency and improve competitiveness. Toll operators will be entitled to impound and impose a penalty fee on vehicles failing to pay tolls and on overloaded axles of vehicles. A central payment system will be established to cover all toll roads whose revenues are channeled to the National Toll Fund. And as I said earlier, clearing house services may be provided and to be outsourced to specialist private operators, which are mostly financial institutions. Tolling urban traffic. For urban roads, the following considerations shall apply: physical constraints, that's availability of space; impact of tolling charging points on congestion and traffic flow, where you may need to adopt other measures just so that we don't create congestion within urban centers; the use of unidirectional charging points, where you only charge one directional lane for purposes of allowing vehicles to get out of CBD or to get into CBD. Ideally, free-flowing tolling will be preferred tolling system for urban traffic. Toll tariffs will be determined for each urban traffic tolling project individually and consistent with this policy. On the monitoring and evaluation, for purposes of compliance with this particular policy, we've come up with quite a number of KPIs which need to be checked into. And the first one is the operational performance, where we'll be looking at lane availability, average speed, toll plaza availability, toll plaza queuing time, accidents and safety indicators, level of service, traffic management in terms of accident management, incident management, and post-crash management. And lastly, we also look at the sort of notifications that are provided to motorists through the variable message signs. On the toll revenues, we will look at the toll traffic volume by vehicle class, traffic volume by time of the day, revenue collected by vehicle class, revenue collected by time of day, revenues generated from the auxiliary services, revenues from penalties. And on the operating expenses, we look at the toll operations, road maintenance, and road operations, that is on incident management and provision of toll-free lines for purposes of managing incidences. Then on the investment indicators, we are applicable. On debt front, we look at the debt repayment schedule, debt service cover ratio. We'll also look at the debt equity ratio, then loan life cover ratio. On the returns and profitability indicators, we'll be looking at the project internal rate of return. We'll also be looking at the equity internal rate of return. And lastly, we'll also be looking at the net present value of the cash flows. On asset by class, we'll be looking at the road infrastructure. We'll be looking at equipment, if any. We'll be looking at auxiliary services and the maintenance program instituted by the investor. Then on the financial information where applicable, we'll be looking at the audited financial statements and debt service repayment performance and currency findings. These are indicators that will be provided in a report. And these reports will be provided periodically on a quarterly basis. Even today as it stands, Expressway normally provides us with a report. The only thing that we've not done is to make a disclosure on how you can access this. And it's something that we need to do as a government for us to appreciate the performance of our toll road projects. Now, on the roadmap, we started this process in May last year. We had an engagement with yourselves as our stakeholders between the 10th and 14th of June last year. We updated our tolling policy, the draft tolling policy in June last year. We secured our CS approval in June last year, then we suffered a setback. We were taken to court. That's why you see there's a bit of a lag between June of 2014 until February this year. So in January, the court gave clarity on the sort of order to stay which were granted when the application was made before the courts. and they said we could continue the public participation exercise because there was nothing that was deterring us from doing so. So we started with the public participation exercise on the 24th of February, which ended on the 12th of March. So after that exercise, we sat down as a committee based on what we considered was applicable. We updated the policy documents, and here we are today to present to you what I've presented to us in terms of the contents of the policy. As I've said, you can access the policy on www.transport.go.ke. I'll also be walking you through some of the major issues that came up and how we've addressed them in the tolling policy. So after this workshop, which is a stakeholders validation workshop, based on the feedback we will receive, we will retreat as a committee, update the policy accordingly, and prepare a cabinet memorandum, which will now be tabled before the cabinet. It will be a joint memorandum by the CS in charge responsible for roads, CS responsible for finance, and the Attorney General. Once we secure cabinet approval, it will now be transmitted for the parliamentary process. And if the parliament considers this policy, approves it, then it will become a sessional paper. And once it's a sessional paper, then it goes to government printers for gazettement. Now, just to walk you through on the sort of feedback we got from the public. One, there's a big trust deficit because of corruption, because of integrity issues. When we were in fact speaking to the public, there were issues surrounding SHA, affordable housing, everything else that came into play. And we do acknowledge it as a government. And the government needs to do something. And that's why, for purposes of this particular policy, we've tried to be a little bit, put some rigid mechanisms to ring fence this fund and to let it only be applicable for road infrastructure development and maintenance. And also, for purposes of transparency, have periodic reports which will now can be accessed by the public, just to see how the toll roads are performing and how the KPIs are being complied with. There are also some suggestions on how we can consider revenue sharing between the national government and the county government. If at all we get surpluses from our national roads, can they also be shared with the county government for purposes of implementing their projects? We do appreciate that the PPP Act as it stands today also acknowledges the county governments. And therefore it was our feeling, if a county government would want to toll some of their road projects to generate revenue, which from where we sit, they may not be candidates today. Some of them may not be. But for purposes of providing bridges or short stretches, Nairobi, Mombasa, and some of the roads, some of the counties may qualify. And that's a consideration which can be made. Issues surrounding cess by county government, I think the courts pronounced themselves on this cess matter, because the public was that you collect cess from us, then you want to come and collect tolls. For those of you who are on the know, cess are no longer applicable, isn't it? I was advised by some of the lawyers in the House. And therefore, it's not something that may be considered for purposes of developing or maintaining our roads. Then there was another element on road safety. Road safety related activities many a times are casualties when we're implementing our road, just because of budgetary or fiscal challenges. And therefore, there's a proposal that we should consider as a committee that in instances where we have tolls being channeled into the National Toll Fund, then we need to secure a percentage that would go into road safety related activities. And this could go into some activities related to borders, trainings. It will even go to the matatu owners some kind of activities just to create awareness on road safety related matters that impact on our roads. And that's a proposal that we will also be considering as a committee through the guidance of our relevant, our DGs and our peers. Now, for us to appreciate the key issues that came into play, one, that the surplus proposals for the policy to expressly ring-fence surplus away from exchequer as currently stated. And the recommendation is upholding ring-fencing, but provide a guide on the usage of development of other toll roads, auxiliary infrastructure linked to that particular toll roads, and subsidizing toll rates. So if we realize surpluses, they can be used in developing other roads, subject to the approval of Cabinet Secretary responsible for roads. They can also be used in improving auxiliary improving or providing auxiliary facilities. And where deemed necessary, those surpluses can be plowed back to help reduce what? The toll tariff, subsidizing the toll tariff. And where this is applicable in our draft tolling policy is Chapter 6, where we are talking about the policy principles, Part A. And the proposed amendment is that the funds will be ring-fenced purposely for the three items which I've mentioned to us. The second items on the policy review, whereby the public felt that reviewing a 10-year review period is such a long time, and therefore we should reduce it to 5 years. And I think this was adopted, and it's affecting our Chapter 9 of the policy, and therefore which now reads that the review to be done periodically, 5 years were deemed necessary. Then on deployment of systems that will ensure accountability and transparency in the implementation of the policy and management of the toll revenue, the recommendation from the committee is that there should be a system that ensures accountability, transparency in the implementation of this policy. And given that it's something that has already been provided for, we felt there was no need to introduce any chapter to be amended in this policy, because it speaks to one of the principles that we already have within the policy. Then there was a proposal for us to exempt school buses and persons living with a disability from paying tolls. And what the committee felt that persons living with disability are candidates who are benefiting from exemptions of paying taxes. In this case, you'll be paying for a service like any other Kenyan. And what came into play that we normally say that inability is not what? Yeah, disability is not what? Inability. You might even find some persons living with a disability who are much more capable than even some of us in the room. And given that we say we are paying for a service, the committee considered it wise that given that they are beneficiaries on tax exemptions and these are service, they should also pay this as just the other Kenyans. On school buses, we all pay school fees. So if at all there'll be any charge that they'll be paying for purposes as toll, then this will be a pass-through cost to who? To the parents in the form of school fees. But what we are trying to say here also, let's also not look at this as a burden into our pockets. As I did paint the picture before, for those who would use Mombasa Road, Mlolongo to Westlands, you'd spend how many hours? 3 to 4 hours, isn't it? How much fuel were you spending idling in traffic jam? Maybe then you used to spend 1,000 bob depending on the efficiency of your vehicle. Some would spend 2,000 bob. And with the improved level of service, what we are guaranteeing is that you'll spend less than what you used to spend, given the characteristic of our roads. And therefore, what we are targeting is a saving that we are realizing out of that improved service. So if you are paying 2,000 bob, if you're using 2,000 before, and now you're using 1,000 shillings, what we are targeting is a fraction of that saving, 1,000 bob, for you to pay as toll. So we should not look at it or perceive it as a burden in our pockets. Then the government should consider the provision of discounts for high occupancy public service vehicles and incentives such as toll-free days. And I think I mentioned that when we were looking at the vehicles that would be entitled to discounts. Previously, it was only on high capacity private vehicles, but now we've also introduced the high capacity public vehicles. And we've amended chapter 7.6, where we have the reductions and exemptions and discounts, which also now incorporates the high capacity public service vehicles. Number 6, on credit, the public requested that for incorporation of use and pay later systems, where credit should be limited to a payment period of 24 hours. That you can access a toll road, use it at the point of pay, or you just pass, but you have a maximum time of 24 hours for you to do what? To make the payment. We have considered it. It looks prudent, sindio? Manake si mara zote pesa iko mfukoni. So ni kama tunapatiana credit, lipa baadaye. We said it's something that can be considered. But until we have a robust, enforceable system to track those who might run away, then for today it might not be applicable. So it will be a question of use and pay. Until such a time when we have a robust system that can track you, because mara nyingi si tunajua saa zingine tunachukua hata mkopo kwa bank, mambo inakuwaga ngumu, mtu anaingia wapi? Msituni anapotea. And it can also happen on our toll roads. And remember, this is an investment where the investor wants to recoup his money, pay his debt obligation, and get his returns on equity. So on electric vehicles should not be considered for discounts, given that it's also reducing on RMLF. The committee considered that particular point, and we dropped electric vehicles from the discount regime. Base rate for tariff adjustments to start from January 2025, and I hope we all saw in the formula that has been adjusted because it was speaking to 2024, and we brought it forth to January 2025. Number 9, the policy, if well executed, will address the funding gap in road infrastructure, development, maintenance. There should be transparency and affordability during the implementation, and I think this is something that is already provided for under the policy principles. Number 10, tolling infrastructure should be aligned with existing urban planning. Many a times our cities, urban centers, suffer congestion just because of lack of proper spatial and physical planning, isn't it? And integration of the transport systems. And therefore, what we are saying as a matter of principle, then when you are planning for a toll road, you should also take into account all spatial and physical planning aspects so that we can integrate all transport modes in our planning, isn't it? So if at all we are planning for a toll road in a particular corridor and there are traffic generated by people who are walking, people who are cycling, people who are using PSVs, then in that holistic planning, all those modes of transport together with the economic activities surrounding that place should be integrated together and planned for accordingly. And that has led to the amendment of this policy, that is chapter 7.8, which now speaks to what I've pointed to us. On number 11, government to promote mixed-use developments along toll roads to enhance socioeconomic opportunities. That speaks to the same point which I've mentioned to us, and it has also been addressed in the same fashion. Number 12, the public is to be involved in the selection, planning, and design of toll roads related infrastructure. And the recommendation by the committee is that during the entire life cycle of the project, an elaborate stakeholders engagement plans needs to be put in place to take care of the public concerns as highlighted in chapter 6F of the tolling policy. Number 13, government to conduct awareness campaigns to enlighten the public on benefits of tolling and the importance of sustainability or importance of sustainable infrastructure. And then similarly to number 12, through the stakeholders engagement throughout the life cycle of the project, this is how we'll be sensitizing the public. Number 14, tolling is perceived as double taxation given the existence of RMLF? Did I attempt to answer this question? Toll is a fee you pay for consuming a service. And you pay it after consuming, isn't it? We said RMLF was put in place purely for road maintenance of our road network. And as it stands today, RMLF is not even sufficient for purposes of maintaining our road infrastructure. That's why we spoke about the 69% versus the 31%. And looking at the dynamics coming into play, electric vehicles, efficient vehicles which are consuming less fuel, that RMLF will even be impacted further. So there is need for us to rethink. We have countries which are implementing tolling today, and they also have RMLF, isn't it? So Kenya is not going to be unique. And one thing that I wanted to insist on, as a country, we need to rethink our strategy. We started with the first mover PPP projects in 2014. Come 2018, we took Nairobi Nakuru Mau Summit to the market. For those of us whom we worked with during that time, Wycliffe is here, we prepared documentations. Uganda picked on our document. There are countries who've been benchmarking on what Kenya is doing. As it stands today, because Expressway came in later, Nairobi Expressway. We have an Entebbe-Kampala Expressway fully functional, isn't it? Tanzania also started way back. They have a toll bridge. Do you hear issues? How many of you have heard of Kigamboni Bridge or Julius Nyerere Bridge? Is it functioning? And it's functioning pretty well. Today, Tanzania is planning the road corridor between Chilanze to Morogoro. And they're using our document, and tomorrow they'll be ahead of us. So we need to think our ballgame. South Africa is implementing all these things. So we need to change our ballgame. Number 15, public queried on the legal framework used to develop the expressway. Nairobi Expressway came into being by dint of us having the Public Roads Toll Act of 1994, which was amended through the Finance Act of 2020. That is what guided. Today, we want to establish a robust framework. This policy will be the overarching instrument that will now inform the subsequent pieces of legislation that would come into play. As it stands today, we've got quite a number of legal instruments that are in place. So if there's any piece of legal instrument that will not be aligned to this particular policy, that will call for amendment. And if there'll be need for us to come up with a totally new piece of legislation, then that will be informed once we have this policy approved by the Parliament. Provision of toll-free alternatives. I think this is something that I've already discussed when we were discussing on the tolling principles, which spoke to provision of a toll-free alternative. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. And I'll now call upon my colleague to take us through the next session.
Sasa napendekeza kwamba tumpe yale makofi yetu 3 factorial. 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much. Now, from the presentation, it's clear that we need to invest on infrastructure. And there is a very critical point that we need to share shortly before the plenary session. During discussions early in the morning, people were asking themselves, who is going to invest on these roads? It became clear that we are the investors, you and me. But how? I want to call upon the chairman of the committee of experts from the Treasury, who has been tasked to put clear on the mobilization of funds for these toll roads, to give us a clear explanation on how we are going to fund them. After that, we will break for a cup of tea to re-energize, and then now we come to the questions. We finish the plenary, then we have lunch. So, Kele, Dr. A few minutes. You are between us and tea.
Oh, I will pay for the tea. Thank you very much, Takumba. I want to thank the participants for giving me this opportunity. I am, as I said, I'm Dr. Oseakili, the chairman of the committee of experts bringing together the industry, financial sector, starting from pension funds in Kenya, both in public and private sectors, the insurance sector, banking sector, the investment community within the capital markets, and all players in who are necessary part of the coke in financing projects which are of public-private partnerships. So having been appointed as a committee of experts by the National Treasury to work together with the PPP Directorate, we've been also doing our own work as a committee, and we are due to finalize our collection of data and information from the rest of the Kenyans and our memberships before we present it to the Cabinet Secretary in due course. Now, for purpose of appreciation, the pension sector currently holds assets of over 2.1 or 2 trillion under management. These funds are, of course, invested in various asset classes. In particular, there's been a major part of the investment is in fixed instruments like the treasury bonds and treasury bills issued by the government, and as well as in equity market, both listed and unlisted, and many other smaller areas of investment. Now, one of the areas which we are allowed to invest in is alternative investments, and one of the alternative investments is into infrastructure. But in infrastructure, we can invest in direct or indirect. If it's indirect, then we do it through arrangements which are made by the proponents into maybe infrastructure bonds, green bonds, and others. In others, when it is involving direct investment, it can actually mean putting either equity into such projects or putting debt capital, which is arranged into the projects. So, in a preliminary manner, which of course does not completely inform of the final findings of our committee, there are certain things which are very pertinent if this kind of project has to attract funding from the private sector. We note the same thing, the same sentiments which have been noted by the committee here, that the biggest challenge we have been having is trust deficit. The investing public, of course, will have another high level. You know, institutional investors and retail investors will be very critical in participating in this kind of projects to make it a success. But the trust has to be built, and to gain the trust of the public and the investing community. When you mentioned that there's a proposal in this policy to create a national toll fund, which will be used to finance critical infrastructure, then the element of trust is very important. It's always normal, and it is standard for us, people who are in the public sector, to always create institutions which are totally controlled by the government. But when you begin to think of bringing in private fund, then you have to rethink totally. That's one of the asks. You have to rethink totally the governance of a toll fund of this nature. It should not be a government agency. It must reflect the totality of the participants, particularly the funding which will be majorly coming from the private sector. in the governance of those institutions. Now, the closest institution which actually reflects this is a pension fund. The pension funds are regulated and they are normally established through a trust deed, which provides for representation in the governance from the employers and members who are employees, and then provides a board of trustees with the powers depending on who carries the largest obligation. In the case of this kind of fund, therefore, if you are going to attract trillions of funds from the private sector, and when I talk about the private sector, you've got to think first that the local funds will be the main movers who are required to put in the skin in the game to be able to have attack-along partners with international pension funds to come in. So the international component of pension funds would have to be attracted to, and also other Islamic finance and other DFIs and so forth, will only come in when they trust the structure you are putting in place. So that is one of the things which we must share with the committee, to really think carefully and engage us as a committee of experts so that you get it right. Otherwise, you may create another state corporation which will not be possible to raise funds from the private sector. The other issue is ring fencing. When you say ring fencing, it is important that ring fencing is legally and under the Constitution of Kenya protective of the private assets of the investors. In other words, it has to be totally legally irrevocable. And it has to be binding on the government of Kenya. Because one of the biggest risks on anything which is of this nature is a change of policy by government. Today, there is this policy which says this is the way to do things. And when people make commitments which are long-term, 30 years or so, and then you suddenly change policy and change the law, and parliamentarians can do that. So one of the critical articles you need to check as a committee of experts is Article 40 of the Constitution, which says Parliament shall not make any law, okay, to deal with private property without compensation. So you've got to think, what is it which will make the private sector funding to be attracted to invest on a long-term basis in this kind of infrastructure? They have to be sure that no government will make a law to take away those private assets which have been invested in toll roads. And therefore, the ring fencing has to have those elements, which is a very important ingredient. The other issue is, I think I've mentioned the issue of governance. We can share these comments with you when you engage us officially, when we are seated as a committee of experts. Now, it's very important that also we remove some of the apparent conflicts of interest which are created by the way you run these authorities. There's a proposal in the long run to have what you call maybe a toll roads management authority. It is important that that authority, the setup, should completely be separate from the toll fund trustees. Because what we would like better is to see the toll fund under management of a board of trustees, which has got the governance, which is both government and the private sector, but with a strong more responsibility being on the people who take the highest risk, which is the private sector investors. Now, I also take note of one proposal made by Kefron, that safety is a very important item. And we encourage people to actually feel that using a toll road is not a dead wish. Also, there will be higher speeds when you have an expressway. Then it's important that we consider in the recommendation establishment or use of part of the funds raised from this toll fund to establish a motor vehicle accident fund, which has been established in the southern part of Africa and other parts of the world, to actually offer automatic insurance cover for the users of the toll roads. if you go to Botswana, they have such a facility, such a fund, which compensates anybody who is on a motor vehicle, be it public or private. You don't have to worry about whether the vehicle has an insurance cover or doesn't have. But the moment you enter that vehicle, you know. Of course, for those other countries, they use fuel levy to finance that fund. It would be a good idea to consider. And many other good ideas which you have mentioned here are acceptable to us. But again, at the bottom of everything is how to manage the trust element. And we are happy that you are considering the element of engaging the public at all stages of the circle of the investments. So with those remarks, we can engage further. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Doc, did you say that you have 2.1 trillion?
2.21 trillion.
Shillings.
That's only pension. But insurance have got more, and banks have got more, and everybody else has more.
Which means that if you wanted to build expressways, you can do 3 of them today.
You want me to answer that?
Yes.
Yes. Actually, one time I think the media will know that when we invited the president, I was a director in the stock exchange, to visit to come to the stock exchange. I did make such a pledge that if we had been given a chance to build an expressway, Nairobi expressway, we would have done it like this. And we are ready to still do it.
Now you have the chance. Thank you very much. So as you can see that we are the ones to own the roads and the money is with us. Now at this point, I want to welcome all of us for a cup of tea. We can make it like 10 minutes. The tea is behind there. We can actually even grab a cup, and then when you hear the mic, we can walk with the cup back. So that now we have the chance to contribute, all of us, to this very useful proposal. So at this point, I welcome all of us. Let's have a cup of tea. Within 10 minutes, I will ring the bell and we reconvene. Karibuni chai.
Is coming back to them as investors. So, in the committee of experts, we are recommending that at least a certain percentage of capital which will be used to build the toll roads from the private sector will be ring-fenced for what we call retail investors, so that they can get into that space. Now, when they get retail investors, this instrument will have to be tradable. It's a tradable security, so that Bonanji can be able to get in and out. And you know the way our GMCs and young people want. They want something they can, when they think that they want to invest, they invest in the morning. Tomorrow when they feel that there is some need, they can sell it on the secondary market and go and do something else. So they have that game, and that's how to get these people involved. I'm happy with one of the products which is in the market now called CD. You know, you've seen a CD fund. CD fund allows a small investment of 100 shillings, and you can then sell it, and there's somebody to buy it every time. So these are the kind of instruments we are going to recommend to the National Treasury as a committee of experts. The other one is creating liquidity for institutional investors. Now, nobody wants to stay for 30 years with their money stuck there. So the structure of the investor, if you only say that the investor must stay for 30 years, that is a very prohibitive. And our local investment market, like pension funds, and even international one will not take it. That's too long. So what is to be done is to create liquidity. And the liquidity you have to have what we call the money makers. The money maker or the market maker, sorry, market maker. A market maker is an institution, and it can be even the fund itself. It can even be the toll fund, which can be buyer of last resort if the market is not ready to uptake when I'm leaving. You can buy back and sell. So you can have that kind of game going on, and the institutional investors will not be worried that they are going to get stuck in one investment. And this is very important, liquidity. I think that in, and then the element of retail investment. Those two will create a lot of buy-in by both local, international, and our retail investors in Kenya. And that will create transparency, because one of the beautiful things about when you allow an instrument like that to be available, there is an information memorandum which must be provided by the proponent of a toll road, which is then public document. That will create the transparency and therefore result public confidence in what you are doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm a coffee kwake ile environmental friendly. 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much. And talking of Gen Zs who want to invest today and withdraw next week, we have with us Bwana Odundo, who has been in the stock market, and this thing is more or less like investing in the stock market. Maybe you could give us some comments on how Kenyans can grab this opportunity and invest on toll roads. You can come and give us 1 minute, such that if I'm paying for Nairobi Expressway, I am convinced that 2 or 3 shillings comes back to my pocket as an investor of that road, so that we see we can do an expressway on Thika Road.
Okay, thank you very much. You surprised me with that. I think I just want to build on what Dr. Kili has spoken about, that all these assets can be converted into tradable instruments. Today, we have a product called a real estate investment trust, which is basically a collective investment scheme for property assets. And one of the most, two of them are very, very popular. We've got our own, the Lab Trust Imara IREIT, which has got a pool of assets that CPF has put together, including Freedom Towers, CPF House, Pension Towers, and a number of properties. And also Kwetu, which has put together, Econ has put together another REIT, which is for the student hostels. So anybody who wants an exposure in property assets, which are very, very attractive, because in my view, a REIT is a much more safer equity investment than a business stock, because there's an underlying asset. You get it? So if today I own a portion of Lab Trust Imara, even if it was to be liquidated, I'm sure there's a property that will be sold, isn't it? But if it's a business, and I'm not saying because I don't support businesses, I do, and the business goes down, equity holders are always the last ones to be compensated, isn't it? So property assets are much more secure equity investments than ordinary business stocks. So I want to say yes, we all wish we had put money in the expressway as individuals, and the only avenue to do that is to have it in an aggregated instrument like a collective investment scheme, which are now approved and issued by, approved by the Capital Markets Authority. So I want to say that this is a tried and tested model. If you go globally, retail investors are very actively investing in real estate, not directly into real estate, but indirectly through unit trusts. And we hope that we can create more structures like this, like the expressway we are talking about, the other roads that will come about, so that Kenyans can participate. In Egypt, retail investors funded the expansion of the Suez Canal. So we have tried and tested models. So it's just to encourage. Kenyans are now becoming sophisticated. Today we have got products in the market that are not plain vanilla, like Mansa, structured funds. Structured funds are coming. So Kenyans are becoming quite knowledgeable in investing in structured assets. So I think this is an avenue will open for retail investors, and I think even in all our projects, including the Usahi Expressway, we want to see how retailers can be co-opted. So that there's, the challenge we have in Kenya is now there's lack of social investment. If you allow Kenyans to participate in the investment, the noise will disappear. So let's do that.
All right. Thank you very much. A round of applause for him. 1, 2, 3. And he has mentioned about Usahi, and we have Van Dyke right here. Maybe I may want to call him and tell us, are you giving us an opportunity to invest in the Usahi, we as Kenyans? And yes, 1 minute. It's become one of the first toll roads. I want to own it.
How embarrassing I didn't even wear a tie today. But thank you so much for allowing us to be part of this. And yes, of course, a new road between Nairobi and Mombasa, which is what we're, Everstrong is sponsoring. We call it Usahihi, Nairobi Mombasa Expressway. And of course, this is a great opportunity for Kenyans to invest in a marquee project in Kenya. There are a lot of needs for roads in Kenya, but there's not another road that's taking most of the logistics traffic out of the port of Mombasa. And it's that corridor, it's that traffic that's very unique. And we've done a lot in terms of talking with the financial institutions who want to be part of this. CPF are our partners for organizing the Kenyan part of the financing, but we're also bringing in JP Morgan and Standard Bank. By the way, that's the first time that's said publicly. But they will be coming in basically to support us on financing what we estimate will be about $3.5 billion in financing in the aggregate. And we want at least $1 billion of that to come from Kenya. It's a good opportunity for Kenyans to invest in Kenya. And I've said from the beginning of Everstrong, going back more than 10 years now, why allow the foreigners to make money on your best assets? Invest your own money into these kind of assets, and claim the investment income that's going to come from that, and keep it right here in Kenya. So that's my answer.
All right. A round of applause for him. 3. Very pertinent question. Why allow non-Kenyans, foreigners, to rake in profits from our infrastructure? That is the question. Now, I want to open this floor and we see how can we utilize this policy as investors to make the best out of it. I want us to give our input about our additions, subtractions, so that we can see if we can call for fast tracking of it, and we throw in our shillings there and start making profit, as opposed to leaving foreigners to do it. I have a few roaming mics. I want to ask my team to grab the mic and start from right there. Who wants to go first? And there's another mic this side. Kindly, so you tell us your name and then your question, so that the team that is responding will note and respond to it.
All right, thank you very much. Richard Malinge from the African Development Bank. So first of all, I think thank you to the technical working group. It was an excellent presentation and very detailed. So I had a series of comments and questions, but I think along the way, many of these were addressed, but I still have a couple that are hanging out there. So the first one, based on the principles, one of the principles is value proposition. So my question is, how can you really ensure value proposition from a congestion perspective in the case where you don't have alternative routes? So that's my question number one, because I think it's very clear on the policy, the government won't be obligated to provide alternative routes. My question number two is linked to the toll tariffs. Because obviously in terms of one of the aspects is around cost recovery. So my issue is what sort of mechanism will be in place to incentivize development based on a value for money, since it will be a pass-through for cost recovery. So the incentive that will be in place to incentivize development which is based on value for money. My point number 3 is, I think, not really fully linked to tolling policy, but overall in terms of the funding mechanism there. Just any thoughts vis-a-vis migration to vehicle mass distance charges? Because it is clear, I think we're using, if we're using axle load configuration as a proxy, but now if we want any thoughts in terms of pushing that forward in terms of actually reflecting the actual damage. Because it's one thing to have the same number of axles, 5 or 6, whatever it is there, but it's another thing to have the loading of those vehicles. So in terms of migration to vehicle mass distance charges. My next ones are more or less like comments. My first comment is vis-a-vis on the overarching criteria for selection of road sections to be included for tolling. I think that's clear. I think it has been presented clearly. And then my next comment is on securing part of the toll revenues for road safety. I think from my perspective, or our bank perspective, I think we'll be a strong advocate for that, because that's the only way you can support your road safety. Another comment would be just another sort of point of caution, because I think one of the things that has been mentioned is also the use of electronic tolling, where you have no physical barriers and gantries there. I would imagine the committee must have sought experience from elsewhere. I think a perfect example is in South Africa, where some of you will be aware. I think what was referred to as electronic tolling had to sort of be put down because of the level of compliance. So my point is, in terms of compliance, how do you ensure compliance in the case where you have no physical gantries? I can tell you in South Africa, compliance is only 30%. Then the last point is on issues around what the end game is vis-a-vis the toll road portfolio versus the non-toll road portfolio, in terms of how that will play through. Just another example I can give here is again from South Africa, where it's about only 13% of the network, which is quite big, is tolled versus 87%. I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the comments and the 3 questions. We can take another one right there.
Thank you very much, moderator. Please allow me to comment sitting kindly.
That's fine, that's fine.
My name is Agayo Ogambi. I'm the CEO of the Shippers Council of Eastern Africa. We are happy that our study informed part of the decision to go the tolling way. My first question would be, the analysis we did in 2020 talked about the cost comparable between Northern Corridor and the Central Corridor. It would be interesting if the committee can present to us, when tolling takes place, what is going to be the impact on the cost? Are we going to see a cost reduction besides the time efficiency and reduction in the time? That would be interesting. Secondly, we were able to send a memorandum, but most importantly for me is, do we have a feasibility study to illustrate the amount of money that we are going to get from tolling? Why am I asking this? The presentation states that we have got a deficit of about 200 billion that has to be raised. Sitting here, I'm still not very convinced that tolling can give us 200 billion. Is it the right approach? And this also against the presentation that in 2014, a survey presented options. So why do we go tolling, and why not go through maybe increase in fuel levy, the issue about insurance premium? So we need to build a case for tolling with evidence-based numbers, because numbers don't lie.
All right.
I have a great reservation about the preposition on the establishment of authority. In the recent past of the government, folding authorities or merging authorities. What our members were prescribing as a way of reducing cost is to possibly have the authority cost within the established authority. For example, why not rebrand the Kenya National Highway Authority to the Kenya National Highway and Tolling Authority. Why create a new authority? I think that's something to be considered. And then lastly, it's still not very clear why we need to have 3 revenue streams from the same motorist. I know there's tolling, there's fuel levy, and there's maintenance. I think we need to think through and ask ourselves, what will give us better returns, what needs to be merged, so that we're able to elevate that. And for me to earn lunch, I'm requesting for the committee to rethink about alternative roads. I use both the expressway and I also use the old road, depending on my pocket and the time I have available. I thank you.
Thank you very much. And before we close, we can have that table 2 comments and from the motor decision, then we respond faster.
Yes, my name is Engineer Michael Cheng. I'm representing IK. I chair a committee on roads and transport in IK, as I mentioned earlier. I participated in the June public participation regarding tolling. And there are a few issues we raised at that time. I still feel I should raise them. When we sat here in the morning, as we waited, there was a lot of Nairobi Expressway being advertised. Yeah, and it was very nice, and we agree with it. So number one, first we agree that tolling, because of short constraint of money, will be a way to go in the future. So one of the issues I say that time has been generated also by my friend there, regarding the expressway having alternative. I raised it last time, I still raise it. We know that once the policy goes ahead, most members may not even have the muscle to wrestle who exactly will participate in selection of which road to choose. The danger is, in the expressway is clear, there's alternative. The lack of alternative becomes a major issue, so that there is selection of the citizen to use or not to use a better service. So it is something that should be taken critically by the developers for the policy to be accepted. The second point is the efficiency element. We tend to say that using our funds, our roads are not very good. They're bad, so the other one will be much better because it has A, B, C, and D. I think we don't want to accept substandard, even in the use of our own money. So I think it's most important that even road agencies take into consideration that the failure of the roads, particularly in Nairobi, are due to drainages, are due to the lack of footpaths. Yeah, so those are issues. We cannot say that if it is done by Kenyans, it is a substandard. If it is done outside, then it's good. We might end up having, and people admiring the expressway, they didn't invest. We might end up having Kenya being colonized by people on the road. So these are issues we need to balance and see our efficiency in also using RLF. Is it at the maximum so that we are going to this other one? And lastly is the selection. I still insist on the selection criteria. Very key. Let's not pick the prime only, and particularly the one that has been invested in recently. I know the Fika Morang or something. That will be one of the changes. People would like to go for it, do a few things, exits and so on, and then use it. Let us get investors, invest really in places which are congested, and let us have new infrastructure. Thank you very much.
I want to pose Morena before Peter comes in so that we field these questions, and then Peter, you start in the next round. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and thanks for the very good questions which have come through. I want to start with Engineer Michael Cheng's question. Engineer Michael, there was a picture which you made here, and I rightfully agree with you. I hope you can see it. Oh. Let's remove this. something that is unique to anybody, isn't it? So you send your requirement, it's factored under the budget, you say I need 200 billion as an example, isn't it? Then they already agreed upon savings. You go there, you're told, whatever you buy is 200, whatever is available is 10. There are standards that guide how we construct and maintain. What will you do? You have a road that requires reconstruction. As an institution, you factored in the remedial measures to put in place. Based on our guidelines, based on our manual, you're given 10 billion. Yes, what would you do, Chair? You'll just be patching, bambanya hapa na pale. If at all there is some road safety to be done, which most of the cases the casualty, you stop even implementing those road safety institutions. It's not our liking, and I'm talking for the road authorities here, it's not our liking. We are just restrained within a particular budget, and that's what we have to work with. That's why we are saying, let's go, if we can go to the private sector to capitalize on their efficiencies, because they don't have this bureaucracy, blah, blah, blah. Because at the end of the day, it's a question of them plugging in money, then under project finance or the revenues generated by the project, they recoup the investments. And when you're talking about efficiency, we also contract KPIs, where we say if a pothole shows up at a particular place, within 1 day that pothole should be detected, and within that 1 day, pothole is what? Is sealed. In many times, because of budgetary challenges, we have a pothole that surfaces somewhere, it takes 3 years to fix it. Because of what? Bureaucracy, speaking to efficiency. Because of another thing, budgetary challenges, which you don't have money to fix on time. That's why we want to capitalize on this scheme, which you want to go to. Picking roads which are prime. We want roads which are financially viable. Investors talk about bankability, isn't it? Roads which can sustain themselves in terms of I invest, it will give me money and seats one. Yes, I will agree with you. If there are projects which we consider that maybe have been done and there's nothing significant for that perceived value to be there, then we should not even target them. But good as road asset management dictates is that you focus on what is good, don't focus on what is bad. We are saying RMLF is not sufficient. And maybe it might even die soon, we don't know, because of the dynamics around EVs and everything else. So if you leave those ones, which are good, what will happen tomorrow? You will even need more money to bring it back to the good state. Do you want to do that? I think as a generation where we are, we have to do something where in the future when people are making judgments and say, at least some people sat somewhere and thought for the good of this nation. Issues surrounding alternative. What I did say, let not government be forced. If there's a road here, then there has to be a parallel next to it. Example of expressway is one we can learn with. Yes, it has an alternative, but it's a short stretch. Remember, that is a closed tolling system, where for every entry and exit there's a toll ramp. Those ramps cost money. Now you can imagine, you want to do the same from Nairobi to Mombasa, a stretch of 458 kilometers. Remember, you can just imagine the cost implication of doing entry and exit at each and every place. And that's why we are saying, wherever we'll be having an open system, where you only have toll stations strategically placed, you don't need to have each and every exit, so that you also allow these local movements. Let government not be forced. So long as we can tell you, and we can map out, that for you to move from Rinoni to Mau Summit, you can use Road A, Road B as an alternative. But that's not what we want to package. All we want to tell you, if you use this toll road, there are benefits that accrue to you in terms of time saving, in terms of cost saving. So let's not look at it as a burden for us to shift looking at alternative routes. And I believe I've addressed your question. Now back to Bwana Mugambi from the Shippers Council. Let me acknowledge that yes, we did receive your memorandum. It's something that is being looked into, and we shall respond to you accordingly, just to address all the issues that you did raise. You've requested that the team to look into the impact of tolling. more so on cost and turnaround times if tolling is implemented. What we are saying and what will be covenanted into the contractual frameworks that we'll have with the investors. Once we agree that level of service will be A or B. Level of service A, I know it's too high and it might be too costly. We'll talk about level service B and level service C. That speaks to the traffic flow. So that means there is no congestion. So that speaks to the riding comfort. That speaks to how you manage traffic flow. And that means the turnaround time, by dint of having a contracted performance standard which speaks to level of service, then the turnaround time will also increase. Because what you're trying to do is to enhance what? Mobility. In case there are incidences, that is also contracted. The operator must, within a given response time, which is contracted, if there's an incident, must detect within 15 minutes, and within 30 minutes that incident is cleared, to allow traffic to do what? To flow. So we don't really, but we can do it, but from where we sit, looking at the level of service in comparison to the central corridor, we might even achieve better turnaround times, and we might even achieve lower cost. Because what is impacting on us is these delays. We talk about non-tariff barriers or something like that. And then also on the quality or on the level of service. If we improve it, we don't even really need to do a survey. It's something that will also be enhanced accordingly. You talked about feasibility study. Remember, this is a policy document. It's an overarching instrument that guides how we implement tolling. When we reach the stage of selecting road, what we must do is a feasibility study, isn't it? And that feasibility study must define or establish that the road is both economically and financially viable for us to take this route. And besides that financial and economic viability, there are those parameters that must be met for us to select a particular route. So feasibility will be on a project by project basis. These are the overall instrument that defines how we will select and implement tolling. Yes, 2014 survey was conducted. There were suits of how we could, recommendations which were put, and tolling was one of them. And your question is, why don't we go for fuel levy? Wakati waliongeza shilingi 7, tulisema nini? For fuel levy. Tulisema nini? And remember, that's a tax. You're obligated to pay it whether you like it or not. And that's why you're going to this user pay principle. So long as it's affordable, so long as it will be efficient and convenient for us to use and reduce on our traveling time, cost of travel, why not implement that route? Any other form that was prescribed under that particular study will come in the form of a tax. And that's when we'll come to sell it to you, utatuambia tumetoshe, hii tax leo, kesho tax ingine, tax over tax. And I don't think that's something that will be sellable to anybody. Establishment of a new authority, we hear you. We also were cognizant of the fact that there are certain institutions which have been proposed for wind-up and mergers, and I think that is something, as we sit as a committee, we'll also discuss and agree. But we take positively your comments on why not rebrand Kenya or just have a department deal with this, instead of establishing a new authority which will come its own overheads. Alternative roads, sio nimesema. Okay. You talked about three revenue streams, tolling and RMLF. Why don't we just focus on one? RMLF is already threatened. Last year statistics, vehicle ownership zimeanza kushuka. EV vehicles zinafanya nini? Zinapanda. I know, Mugabe, you have a very vehicle efficient, a very efficient vehicle, which means hata consumption ya mafuta imefanya nini? Inflation na ina road network tumesema pia inafanya nini? Will RMLF be sustainable? That's the question. And that's why we need to think differently and get an alternative mechanism of funding our road infrastructure. Thank you, Malinda from AFDB. Thank you for your compliments to Najaribu. Value proposition in case of congestion. Remember what I said? We'll be contracting out levels of service. So there will be no room for what? Congestion. Because what we'll be contracting is, we are giving you this road, and you covenant to give us level service B throughout. If at all the traffic demand will trigger the need for us to expand, then that will be treated, and we have to preempt it in the future. So that if case there is any augmentation that is needed, it is done before the level of service drops to maybe D or E that will bring about congestion. So it's something that we plan today on the level of service, and if in the foreseeable future there's something that will happen, then there has to be a trigger for augmentation. So tariff mechanism for incentive on the, I didn't get this particular question, because there has to be some tariff to help you recover your development maintenance costs, and also at the end of the day meet your debt service obligations, because these things are financed through debt and equity. Besides that, that tariff should also inform a modest return, and I think that should be the incentive for somebody to provide an infrastructure. So it's a balance. One, you have cost recovery on development, maintenance, and rehabilitation. Two, there has to be element for you to refinance, or not to refinance, for you to meet your debt obligation, for you to finance wherever you got your money. And three, there has to be a return, because anybody who comes as an investor comes looking at making money. But that, whatever you want to make, has to be modest. And what will ensure that you make modest, these things should be negotiated at the backdrop of value for money proposition. Vehicle mass distance charges. Vehicle loading is already regulated through our Traffic Act and the East Africa Vehicle Load Control Act, isn't it? And therefore, there can only be compliance. And therefore, if you look at our proposition or our proposal within the policy, is to decriminalize what? Overloading. So if you are found to have overloaded, you are charged based on the distance that you've covered within the toll road. And that becomes an incentive mechanism to who? To the investor. But we don't encourage what? Overloading on our road infrastructure. I think on selection of roads, you're saying that was well. I think we take it as a positive comment. Then on the road safety, I think that's also a positive comment. Then the issues surrounding ETC, free flow, and the case study you put to us about South Africa. We are all privy to the South Africa case, most precisely Gauteng province. Come last year, the government decided to abolish what? Tolling in Gauteng province, not in South Africa. It was predominantly in Gauteng province, isn't it? As it stands today, the road between Gauteng and Maputo is still operating, isn't it? And people are paying tolls. But the question is, what were the lessons learned in South Africa that we should be able to deal with in Kenya so that we don't have it replicated? It was purely on stakeholders management. The government didn't talk to the people. They decided to put a toll road and put gantries to deduct money in their accounts, and people refused to comply. And I think that's why we are here to sensitize the public. This is where we're going. But when we get to projects level, we still have to bring into the room and tell you, this is what we have to do. These are the benefits that will accrue to you, and this is how we will do it. In case there are wallets in your banks or whatever, or in a form of prepayment, then we have to discuss with you. Not just somebody waking up, putting on something, oh, napata to account yake inakuwa readed, minus. That's why South Africa failed in this. What is the end game? South Africa has coverage of 13% against the entire network. There are other jurisdictions which you can also benchmark with, isn't it? Japan, what is the coverage in terms of road network that is under tolling? I don't know whether my friend Mogare-san, what is the coverage?
Sorry, thank you. I think it's one of the highest, but I can't have the coverage. But the beautiful thing in Japan is that they have even now moved where those entities are actually becoming now quite internationalized and also providing revenue to the country.
I think that's sufficient. If you move out of Japan, just go up to Korea. Korea is also big time in tolling, and most of their key corridors are under Those of you who have traveled, you've said it, isn't it? So, in as much as we want to benchmark with South Africa, let's also look elsewhere, because we want to develop as a country, and we must transform this country, and we must start from somewhere. So we may not really target all of our network, but strategic ones, because infrastructure is a backbone or pillar to our development, and we must target those for purposes of efficient running of this economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I want to take another round of inquiries, and we are going to start, like I promised, with Peter.
Thank you, Kubo. My name again is Peter. I'm representing the Motorist Association, that is the vehicle owners and drivers in this country. So we are happy that we have gone through the presentation, and we'd love to raise 1 or 2, 3 issues. So you know very well that in 1990s we used to have toll roads, but they were replaced by more effective fuel levy, which now we call road maintenance levy. So when we now want to introduce toll roads again, that means that we are going to have toll roads and fuel levy at the same time, while that would amount to double taxation. And because we cannot have both. And if you listen to Ade Maja on becoming Builder's colony, Africa needs infrastructure. Africa needs development. But the truth is that if we call the Europeans to build Africa's infrastructure, Africa will be owned by Europe. And if we call upon Chinese to build or to develop Africa, Africa will become Chinese colony. So it is only Africa, build and develop Africa, then Africa can be owned by the African. So when you look at countries like China, they are not relying on PPPs. They are relying on PBS system, that is public-based system, where the government has got its own machinery, where the government has its own workforce, public jobs, that now do the roads themselves. But the PPP, we have found that especially the foreigner who is volunteering to come and do our roads, then we pay them for that years, or they own our roads. That is, I don't know whether to use the name neo-colonial. So if you look at what we are having right now, you'll find that we are happy that we are trying to look at local solutions where we can have private investments, investors removing that yoke of our roads becoming private roads. So if you look at our roads, they are national roads, especially those that are Kenya, and they are national assets and a national heritage. So as a sovereign, we know that these roads access the port. So you can imagine if our ports are under private ownership, and then we are paying them for that years. I can say without fear of contradiction that the assertion that we are not able to do our roads is not true. Because if you look, Mr. Kubo here, is that in the last 10 years in the administration, Kenya did a superb job. You did 11,000 kilometers of paved roads. So when you tell us then again that you cannot upgrade the Northern Corridor, we don't believe you. And we are not asking the Northern Corridor to be upgraded at once. You know, we have a very good road from Rironi, from Nairobi to Rironi, we have 5 roads. 114, 115, Kambura, all those roads. So when you get to Kamandora, that is Rironi, we have again two alternatives, the Maimahio and the Kenogi route. So we do not have much congestion, apart from when we are having the festive seasons or when we are having probably vehicle breakdown. So the urgency of, but then from Naivasha to Nakuru, that is where the real problem is. But I can say that there is an existing road that is abandoned that can be easily be rehabilitated using our local resources. The same to Mombasa Road. From Emari, the road is almost free. So there is issues with our 750,000 petitioners who have petitioned against the tolls. And if I had time, I would have gone through the concerns they have raised. But probably since we have written to the CS, the minister, and we are awaiting, and also the PS, we have written the letters that they have received, and we are waiting for their response. So if you look at the capability of doing our roads, it is better we do our roads ourselves, even through the loans. We feel better when we pay the loans. And even if we motorists, like someone have said that we do a harambe, by the way, Kenyans are very rich. If we want to do our own roads, just float a bond, and we are going to oversubscribe it so that we can do roads instead of inviting other countries to take our existing roads. Okay. You know, let me just add this, because this was our session, yes. And you know that Kefa Center has done an extensive presentation. Right. Existing roads, the road says that you cannot toll existing roads, because a pure PBOT, that is build, operate and transfer, is done on a virgin land, just like the SGR was done. So you acquire a new land where now that is justifiable over BOT, build, operate and transfer. But on an existing road, that is a public road, on a public land. And constitutionally, you cannot stop people from using their own or toll them from using their own land. So the existing public roads are public by nature, and we know that we can be able to upgrade them easily using our local means. But you see, in the inflation that we have seen, because we have examples of Nairobi Expressway being voted as the best model, actually from where we sit, we know that it is an exclusive road which serves just a few people. If you look at Thika Road is the best model because it carries huge number of traffic at higher speeds. And it moves, it is a nature of an expressway. So if you look at that road, what was done by the Exchequer and roads which we have serviced, actually the development that came up with that road made the government increase its base. And when SEDA tells us that increased number of vehicles is a curse, no, we see vehicles as a necessity. And when we increase the vehicles, the tax base increases, the excise duty increases. If I was to tell you, the half of the fuel cost that we pay is taxes, leave alone the RMLF that has been increased from shillings 18, I don't know whether illegally, to 25 shillings, because we did not participate fully. We did not participate fully in its implementation as public. Carissa can tell you when we went, Kennedy can tell you when we went for that public participation, it did not happen. So we have Nairobi Expressway.
And Peter, maybe you, because of time, yes, you can ask the last one and then we leave.
Let me ask this last one.
Yes.
That the road, we can say that the road PPPs are informed by profiteering, by the privateers. And that is why they are targeting our key roads based on, because we have very needed infrastructure in the northern of the country, where we have roads that require to be, but you find that they are only dwelling on the northern corridor. And to make matters worse, they even want to tax or to toll existing roads, the bypasses, the Dongo Kundu. So, and then they subject us because that cannot become a toll road. So I'll finish with that and saying that when it becomes that it is mandatory we pay for the toll roads, and then our freedom of movement is curtailed, and that is a constitutional right. We know that the public paid for the construction, and then we'll be subjected to NTSA and police and judiciary to now force us to pay.
Now, Peter, I think we
so
have
even the government.
Okay,
so,
Peter.
Those are issues that I have raised. I've finished.
Yes.
And they are in this document which I have given you. So next time when we are meeting, we'll call you as stakeholders when we are meeting, so that I am able to raise those issues that are there in the petition that we have factored here. So thank you, and if I'm given another opportunity, there is another point very burning that I did not touch on. So thank you so much.
Okay, and I wanted to tell you, Peter, that we already have your written memorandum. We will indeed respond to it. So we don't have to exhaust everyone on issues that are particular to motorists. So we take a record and we will respond to the specific issues. So. They could be okay. We want to take a few more, like 2, 3 more, and then we respond. I want the mark. First, let's start from the corner there where you are. We can take one there, one here, and at the back. Then we respond.
My name is Peter. I have 3 questions. One.
We have another Peter who has just spoken. So which Peter is this?
I'm Mr. Peter Oyaro.
Okay.
One question. I have 3 questions. First, suppose the road is now new. What mechanisms and criteria used to determine the maintenance money when the road deteriorates? Second question.
Yes.
How long does the so-called road maintenance take to maintain the road once it gets damaged? Question number 3. Do you have road checks to report back to whoever is responsible for such maintenance?
Thank you. I want us to be like Peter. You straight to the point, simple and brief.
Thank you.
So that we save time. So it's right here first before Daktari.
Carissa from Truckers Association of Kenya.
Yes.
We are cognizant of the fact that actually we have to have the toll roads. We are not actually rejecting the idea. We are actually rejecting the way the idea is being brought about. Number one of the issues that has come up when the engineer was presenting was the issue of trust. And I can see still a very big issue with the masses out there. For those of us seated here, they can really understand some jargon and some, fuel levy, toll and all this jargon and everything. But for my driver, those drivers who drive my trucks, there are those truck owners out there. Ask them about tolling. They bring out a class war. So there is a lot that needs to be done by the government. The trust out there is almost zero. And they look at this, he was calling it a service. They look at it as taxation. They don't look at it like they're paying for a service.
Okay, second one?
Second question. I think it has been brought up, but I'll also just bring it up because it's also an issue. RMLF and tolling. Choose one.
Okay. Final one?
Either before I go there, either we toll or we fuel levy. Okay. Alternative roads. Okay. This one, I will still stick with it. Let people make their choice. Let's not talk about compensation of land and everything. Because it's from Nairobi to Mombasa, put the expressway up, put the other one down.
Okay,
thank you.
Issues of alternative. So what I request is that let us not belabor by repeating what has been asked. So I want the final one for this session from Mogher, and then
thank you.
we respond.
Let me just first say thank you so much. I want to declare I also had a chance to have an input into the draft, so I'm not going to ask a question, but just to give a statement that perhaps can be able to guide. I have had an experience and a privilege to study the Northern Corridor in its entirety. I said that formerly I was working with JICA, and now I'm consulting for the Mombasa Gate Bridge and looking at specifically how we can improve and expand our road asset for our country to be competitive. So I want to make about 3 comments. One, I think we have a single purpose to make a decision as a generation whether we want our country to be in a strong ground amidst the challenges that we have in East Africa, so that Kenya can remain ahead in the sector. I think that's a decision we have to make. The second point is that the Northern Corridor is our lifeline. I took 3 years of study, and I realized that Kenyans, unless we wake up to the fact that we are a trading corridor, and our biggest asset, if we ask ourselves, is actually our road asset. This is where we've invested heavily. How do we want us to move forward with that? I submit that the Northern Corridor must be given special attention, and all various, in every space that we are in. If we don't make it possible for the people to trade, for the intra-trade in Africa, which stands at less than 15%, I think that's the biggest problem. We trade more with outsiders than we do within ourselves. We have to make that strategic decision as a generation. So it's not what we are being called upon by raising and discussing about the tolling policy is not an operational matter for now. We must make a decision for the children of our children, knowing where the world is going, what would be good for them. You have to make that decision. Finally, I want to say and submit that when we discuss about the tolling, it's actually an alternative to the existing situation that we are in already. If you look at it in the marketplace, that we have the RMF, we have the others that we have, but then this is also coming in so that there are more alternatives that gives to our people and generations to come to choose from. So if we then look at it that way, it will perhaps be able to guide that this is a guiding. It's something that should be able to guide us and to guide the coming generation to be able to then make decisions that can impact negatively or positively to the competitiveness of our country. Maybe what I think I would suggest to the team is that we need to improve our citizenry participation, and I'm happy with what is happening. It must be continuous. We must be vigilant continually, not just one-off. And then we have to take this conversation to all spaces, the resident association, at home, in the religious spaces, to discuss continually in where these matters arise from, so that it's not a one-off engagement. I think if we do that, we'll begin to see how positive this tolling policy will help those who are being governed and our leaders. That's where I stop. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to call on Engineer Kefa to fill those questions, and then before we take one or so final round of questions. Karibu.
Okay, thank you. Allow me to call Moses Chirona to just respond to issues surrounding alternative. Then I'll proceed with the rest of the questions.
Allow me to give some context. I know the question had previously been answered, the one on the alternative road. So I thought of providing another context that maybe may provide more clarity. So I'll use the example of the expressway. So if you look at the expressway, it's a 27-kilometer road. End to end, the charge is about 500 shillings, right? So if you work out the charge per kilometer, it comes around, anybody? Slightly more. I'm giving you a chance because you have a calculator, so it doesn't look like I plucked it out of the air. 18 shillings, right? So now, when the expressway was designed, it was supposed to take a certain portion of traffic, right? So it was envisaged that not everybody was going to use it. So the way the toll tariff was designed was based on what the study showed, how many users could be picked from the lower road corridor, right? Now think about doing now the road from Nairobi all the way to Nakuru. If we say we create an alternative parallel to the existing corridor, what do you think would be the cost of the toll road? I guess what I'm trying to drive at is that because all of us are using the road, we are able to drive down the cost per user, right? It's going to be unsustainable if we create a parallel alternative road. I mean, if you think about it, if we had the money to build the alternative, the parallel road, why don't we just build it, right? Because if we had the money, why don't we build it? So I hope you get the sense. So our idea is, based on the 18 shilling toll tariff, if we can all of us use the road, maybe we can achieve a third of that. So instead of paying 18, we pay 6. I hope that provides some context. Thanks.
Thank you, Moses. It's not that we do not want, it's not that government should not provide. In the event it cannot provide, let not be as though it was supposed to be a mandatory or an obligatory thing to do. If at all there is an alternative, remember what I said, we'll be able to map out what the alternatives are, isn't it? In the event there is none, then government should do something, still to encourage people to do it. But let's focus more on the benefit of using a toll road. Why do we want to look at it as a burden? And I tried painting a picture. If between now and Nakuru you're doing 5 hours, and we improve the road, you're doing 2 hours. If you're using 6,000 as your fueling for, and now you're using 3,000, why don't we look at it from that perspective and start shifting alternatives? Because the moment we start talking about alternatives, we may even define alternatives, which might even be much more expensive to you as a user. I hope these we are appreciating where we're coming from. And thanks, Ms. Garrison, for your compliment. And as rightfully put by Carissa as well, we've been undertaking public participation. The reason why we went to the wider public is that there are people who may not have a chance to sit the way you're sitting. Ndio maana tulienda mashinani kule tuzungumze tuambie mama, because mama may not afford. And we were speaking in their native language, Kiswahili, for them to appreciate this is the thing, and this is what tolling is going to entail, and this is how it's going to be implemented. And it's not going to stop here. As I did indicate, there will be a parliamentary process. If they choose to undertake a further public participation, well and good, they will undertake. But after the approval of this, on a project by project or on a project level, once we do feasibility studies, it's incumbent upon government to engage the public, to know what his intentions are and how it's going to implement, if at all it's tolling. Sawa sawa. So the next question was from Peter Oyaro, and I would want Engineer Nyakuti to combine with the questions from Peter Murimi from Motor Resolvers, if you could respond to those questions, Engineer Nyakuti.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I'll start with Peter Muridi of Motor Association. He gave us quite some comments. We will not capture all of them verbatim, so I'll try to capture the most important parts of it. He raised the issue that all road tolls, there was a time when Kenyan roads were tolled, and then they were replaced by fuel levy. And then you also raised the issue of tolling amounts double taxation. And then you raised the issue of if we call foreigners to build infrastructure, we will become colonized. And also you proposed that some countries are using public works department to do their roads. So up to that, let me try and respond to some of your issues. It's true that we used to have toll roads in the past. If you drive along the corridor, most of our way bridges, where the location of way bridges right now, used to be where the toll roads were. And What informed the removal of those toll stations? One is that only a section of the public was paying the tolls. So only drivers who were based on the corridor, on the northern corridor, were the ones who were paying the tolls. And then, so the issue is, what happens to the other motorists who are in the far-flung areas? They were enjoying the benefits of the roads and not paying for the taxes. That informed the introduction of the fuel levy. Now, currently, why do we want to bring part of our network, our road network, for tolling? It's because, as it has been explained here, first of all, fuel levy is paid by everyone, and everyone needs to benefit from the intended function of the fuel levy. And the fuel levy is meant for maintenance. It's not meant for development of new roads. So in that aspect, you'll find that fuel levy is no longer applicable for development of roads. And that being the case, we have also looked at the debt. We have been developing our roads using borrowing from raising funds internally from taxes, and also borrowing from multilateral and bilateral lenders. We also realized that we are at a maximum. In fact, right now we have exceeded the debt ceiling by quite some percentage, and we need to bring it down. So that makes us start having to look at how do we finance the development of roads and what are the alternatives. Which brings me to the second question. Investors don't need to be foreign. We have guys from the financial sector, and they have explained to us that actually there are instruments that they can craft for the public to invest in toll roads. And I'll be a very proud Kenyan if I know I'm driving on a road like the Nairobi Expressway, that for the 300 shillings I'll pay, 1 shilling for the 20 minutes I'll be on that road, I'll have earned myself either 1 or 2 shillings. So let's not think that always investment has to come from foreign investors. And as Mr. Sorry, I've forgotten, Daktari said told to us, pesa iko. So me, Daktari, I'm coming. Yes, we'll come to you and borrow some money. Not borrow, we craft for investment. Because if you say borrow, we'll be going to debt. Yes, and let's have this clarity. When a road is tolled, then the government is not going to fund that road for maintenance or for development. Someone must bring in his own funds to develop that toll road. You also proposed that we should take a first approach, which is a good proposition. But look where we are. We are being told, we have put it out that we have a backlog of maintenance and development, and it's not reducing, it's increasing. And as one Mr. Mogere told us, we have really to think about the proposition, because some of these things, if we don't face them right now, 10 years down the line, we'll be making the same decision, and it will be making it at a premium, because we'll be having a crisis on our hands. The issue of your petition, I think Mr. Kumbi has informed you that we will respond to it. And then the issue of PPPs that will curtail freedom of movement. We have the Nairobi Expressway. Yes? We are telling you, if you cannot use the toll road, there's an alternative. Let's decolonize our minds. An alternative does not need to be parallel to the toll road. It can go right angles at a curve and whatever, but it still come back and bring you to the same road ahead. So that one does not curtail your movement at all, and that is provided for in the constitution. Mr. Peter Yaro, I'll come to you. You are saying suppose the road is now known, but I didn't get to your question because I was speaking too fast. And then the second question was, how long should it take to maintain a damaged section of a road? I think that one is covered in the service level agreement that will be provided for during the implementation of the project. And we have, most of the time, there are timelines in the service level agreement where we state either it's an hour or 2 hours or 7 days for you to respond to a defect that's on the road. So I think I've captured most of them, unless there's something that I've forgotten my colleague can take over.
Thank you very much, Engineer Nyakuti. Just to reinforce some of the points that is put across to us. Yes, the Bill of Rights guarantees us certain rights, isn't it? Peter, the Bill of Rights guarantees you freedom of movement, isn't it?
Yeah, and it is the role of the government
to provide that public good for you to do what? To move, isn't it? Sorry?
Shifting the role of doing the roads.
To?
See, our role is to pay the taxes, and then the government and agencies give us a service, and that is service is doing the roads, not motorists, not the private sector.
Let me ask you, Peter, whichever way you look at it, when you pay taxes, it pays it builds the road. When you pay toll, it builds the road. So at the end of the day, who wins?
Pay tax and get the service.
You are flipping me, okay. It's okay. Now, let's go back to what you raised. The Bill of Rights and our constitutions guarantees you freedom of? Does it guarantee you moving for free?
As much as
just answer my question.
as much as I'm paying half of my fuel cost as tax, and it's a public road, then someone has to use that tax. The exchequer has to use that tax to maintain that road and not shift that road.
Okay, thank you. I think I've heard you. In as much as you've got that Bill of Rights, it doesn't guarantee certain things you have to pay, isn't it? The other question is, why give a private sector to build our roads? As it stands today, as government, do we outsource these functions?
Chinese go the BBC way.
No. Do we outsource the construction of the roads? All these roads you see, Kenya roads, they've been outsourced to private guys, isn't it? There is no way, there is no point Kenya. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's tax that we pay to go back to pay those debts from one bank, isn't it? But we outsource, isn't it? Peter, we outsource.
Yeah, we outsource.
We outsource everything, constructions and maintenance. I wish I could respond to you. Otherwise,
of proper jobs. Because a PBS system, that is why our graduates are not a PBS system, where now we have the government owning the machinery and the road maintenance units. That absorbs a lot of our engineers, a lot of technicians, unlike when we are outsourcing even the tigger and the sweeper. We kill public jobs.
Okay, we've had you, Peter. We've had you. Just to correct, toll roads were there in the 80s, not in the 90s. They started in the 80s. And as rightfully put, there were how many toll stations? 3. Back in the present, we had how many kilometers of road? 15,000 kilometers. Today we're talking about, and we have 3 toll stations. Those ones could not help fund our roads, besides other challenges. That's why we went to RMLF. We can't sit today knowing that RMLF is threatened for us to wait until such a point in time we will not be able to fund. And as Mogere-san said, tolling is going to complement RMLF. RMLF is only for maintenance, not development. And even with the maintenance needs we have today, it cannot sustain our roads. The network is ever increasing. Inflation is eating up on what is available. EVs are contributing to lower consumption. What can we do? I didn't request you to respond kindly. So we have to do something as a government. We can't. You talk about exchequer. Look at exchequer. What competing priority needs does government have? And that exchequer cannot even support. It's public knowledge. It's not only something that is unique to the road sector, it's across all sectors. You go to medical, the medicine sector, issues. You go to county government, as you hear, issues. What do? We can't sit back and wait. We have to do something. China has PPPs, please, for the record, just Africans need to take on these things, create our own solutions. And yes, we need to do it. And I'm happy that the CPF, NSSF, these pension funds are here to help us carve out a solution where we can all, as Kenyans, we can fund and take ownership of the projects. As it stands, previously, the pension funds did not allow for long-term financing. It was only short-term, and it didn't allow investment into infrastructure. That's why they are being onboarded for us to have this solution, African solution. And that's why previously we were looking at Europe and China. But in as much as we are looking at Europe and China, we were not privatizing. These assets still remains government properties. And the contracts clearly defines what they're supposed to do in terms of providing that public good, which we still provide today as government because we outsource Chinese, other institutions to construct the road and even to maintain it. So it's just a question of having the same concept of providing and maintaining, but packaging together so that it can be done in a long term. So if you bring on board the pension funders and everybody else, then you'll have an African solutions for us to take ownership on many of these assets. Then you say we cannot, some of our assets are key installations. And let me tell you, in as much as we could be having concessions in the port, there are certain functionalities which you cannot transfer to the private entity. You have to retain them as a government. And this speaks to installations that touches on security. If you see ports, be it airport or the seaport, there are certain functionalities which the government cannot delegate. In as much as you've got a concession, you have to safeguard that component for you to provide it because it touches on national security. So we are not privatizing. It's a question of having a long-term arrangement for this public good to be delivered. And I think you said Nairobi Expressway is an exclusive. How many people have seen matatus and even sand trucks on Expressway? There are so many. Private vehicles are there. So it's not an exclusive. You see the club here a few. It's only that when you appreciate the value of your time and the value of sitting in jam, that's when you go to Expressway. Please be our ambassador outside there, Peter. It's not an exclusive road. Matatus are using that road. Hata enda pale saizi utawapata. Oyaro, how long does it issues of maintenance? When a road is damaged, it's damaged. When a road is damaged, it's damaged. Ujaribu kukarabati namna gani, you'll just be wasting government resources. If it's damaged, what you need to do is to do what? Reconstruct it afresh. And that's why when I was presenting earlier on, I said the dictates of good roads asset management. Maintain tu ile barabara ni mzuri. Hata nguo yako ikishaanza kupata viraka, utakuwa unashona hapa na kiraka inatokea kando yako pale umeweka kiraka. Si ndio? Therefore, your maintenance should be perpetual as long as the road is in good condition to be maintained. So from day one when you finish, put it on maintenance throughout the design or the life of the asset. Now on Carissa from Truckers, I told you, trust deficit, major issue. And it's something that we have to acknowledge as government. And we must start from somewhere, isn't it? There are institutions that are responsible for this. I cannot speak on how we'll deal with integrity, corruption, blah, 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 mismanagement. Those are discharged with other institutions. What we can do as a sector is to try tighten the policy so that when we get into implementation, such kind of things don't. Is that a fair response? Do I need to repeat why RMLF and tolling? RMLS is purely for maintenance. Tolling, we want to do for both development, blah, 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 and roads which will be under tolling are not going to be candidates for RMLF. It's a complementary. Do I need to add? Alternative roads. Do I need to talk about it again?
Thank you very much. And for purposes of declaration is that Peter and I had a conversation and we agreed why matatus are using expressway. It's because the mamas, they want to use 30 minutes to home to Kitangala to avoid paying 150 to a border to reach home, which we are in agreement. But we'll continue this conversation over lunch.
The concession.
Now, no, we'll continue the conversation over lunch because it's a long one. Now, between us and lunch is only 2 questions, only burning ones if they are there, so that also we don't inconvenience the hotel. They have other plans, other guests. So I want to invite only 1 or 2 final, and then we close, if we have a burning one. Do I have any takers? And only what has not been addressed. Then we can address that. Any other before I close? Okay, so we'll respond to that and then we'll close. You can say it again.
Thank you. I've asked about how much you expect to get from this against the backdrop of the shortfall in the budget allocation. I expect Dr. Keffer is saying you get about 50 billion, while the need is 200 billion.
Yes.
So are we certain that we will get this?
Okay.
Now that I have the mic, please comment on the ring fencing. Whatever goes to government goes to national treasury and can be allocated for other emergencies or other expenditures.
Yes.
Would ring fencing, is it legal or we just going to ask?
Okay. I think those 2 questions quickly, because the gap in RMLF is about 200 billion. He's estimating that tolling could raise about 50, so still we have a shortfall. He needs some explanation. And the ring fencing of surplus from tolling. Quickly and then we'll break.
It's true that as it stands today, there is a gap. Tolling, depending on which road we are targeting, the traffic volume and the toll tariff that will be implemented, based on some previous studies which we did, and this speaks to Nairobi Nakuru Summit, it demonstrated that it would generate revenue to try to offset the development maintenance needs. However, there would be shortfalls somewhere here and there that would necessitate government appropriation. And looking at that, that's what brought in issues surrounding affordability. Now we want to reduce on the scope and come up with something that is affordable. And based on the projections, whatever we are going to do will be sufficient enough to cater for the development costs, meet maintenance need, offset financing costs, and give modest returns to the developer or the investor. And this is specific to a project. The picture we are painting here is for the entire country in terms of requirements for development against what is available. This is including zile barabaras and mashinani. So tolling would not cure this. Tolling would only relieve government on the burden of the exchequer, such that any candidates on tolling, any money would have gone there, then it's relieved its goal for purpose of developing other roads. I hope we're clear. Now, when it comes to ring fencing is a question of setting aside a particular fund. This is where we're coming from. And that fund is regulated to meet its obligation, which means those funds don't go into the government basket, the bigger basket. They go into a specific fund that has been opened, which is governed by the Public Finance Management Act. An example we have here is the Road Annuity Fund. Okay? The Road Annuity Fund was established by regulations that are underpinned under the Public Finance Management Act, and that fund sits at a specific place. All the cash-ins goes to that fund, and all the cash-outs are governed by the regulations. So if it says you only pay service obligations on an annuity program, that's what it will pay. There is no point in time that it will go pay wage bill or pay any other government obligation. That's what we talk about ring fencing. And many a time, investors who want to put in their money wants to see a ring-fenced fund from where the government will meet their obligation in terms of paying for their investments and any other financial obligation. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much. I hope we are clear there. And now it's only one item between us and lunch, and that is to recognize that we have all been patient and that we dedicated time for this purpose. And for that vote of thanks in a minute, I want to call upon, I will call upon Kiplagat to do it. But now before then, I will have closing remarks from the Director General to represent the peers, and then we close. Karibu Deji.
Yeah, thank you, Kumba, and thank you, the team. I like the conversation, I must admit, and I like the questions that are being asked, because they are valid questions. When somebody asks, is this a toll, or is it a tax? I think it is good for discussion. So I like the conversation that we have in here. And you can imagine we had to go around the country to have this discussion. And it is important that government has a conversation with its people. But I think it is important that we agree as Kenyans that some things have to be decided. And it's unfortunate Karisa has left the room, because I wanted to use Mombasa Road as an example. Those who own trucks, how many hours are you taking from Mombasa to Nairobi? Those who would know. How many hours does it take? Sorry? 7 hours. If it takes 8 hours, Nyakuti, when you drive down in a Prado, how long do you take? To Mombasa from Nairobi? 8 hours. If a Prado is taking 8 hours, a truck definitely cannot take 8 hours. Sorry? Probably 14. 12 to 14. If it's a good truck. What are we saying? The number one problem we have on that road is congestion. True or not true? It is congested through and through. Number two, that road is not in the best of conditions. If you look at the pavement, what we call the pavement, that tarmac is worn out on very many sections. And I can tell you from where I sit, I do not have the money to maintain that road the way I should. And that is the RMF that we are talking about. Now, it has a capacity issue, it has a maintenance issue. As a people, as a country, we must make a decision. Would we want to have that road in that state for the next 10 years? And the fiscal space, and Treasury is here, is small. So we are not able to go and borrow and put together a dual carriageway from Nairobi to Mombasa. So we must choose what to do with it, because it's one of our lifelines, as it was stated here. And the choice we must make is probably just go the PPP way. Pay a little bit more, but when the truck comes out of KPA port in Mombasa, to Nairobi it is not 14 hours, 15 hours. It is perhaps the 7 hours, 8 hours. And what does that mean to the economy? What does that mean to you as a transporter? You probably would own 100 trucks to move the same cargo today. You could probably reduce your fleet to about 60 or 70. Does that make business sense? Are we building the economy when we do that? I think so, because the cost of transport is coming down. I also look at another facility that we have in this country. It is not related to roads. It is the Kaine Dam. And the Kaine Dam was put together using World Bank money. World Bank, I think, is not represented here. So why is it that you pay for the water that you pay for in your house? The Kaine Dam was put together using World Bank money. I remember it very well because I know people who were displaced at around the same time, around early 90s, late 80s. But we pay for the water. Why is it that we pay and we don't complain? Yet we paid the taxes that paid the loan, Bonapitawan. We paid the loan to the World Bank that put together this dam. Yet I'm sure you pay for water. Why is it that you pay and you don't complain? You see, we have been used to roads being social infrastructure, social assets, that nobody pays for roads. And up until the expressway, which is outside here, nobody thought in Kenya you can pay for roads. But when you go out there, everybody is paying for roads. And you choose whether to use the road that is tolled or use along a route, a more congested route, and you end up at the same point. What I'm pleading for is that I agree with somebody who said, I think it was Karisa, you're back. The trust levels out there are very low. The awareness levels out there are very low. We know that. We know we cannot communicate to Kenyans fully just through hotels and through search forums. And we are asking for you who are seated here to be our ambassadors out there. Because you understand a bit of it, and you know why we are doing this, and we are doing it for the good of this country. To be honest and sincere, we want you to be our ambassadors. Go out there and explain it to somebody else so that they get to understand it. We also know that we need to go out ourselves and talk more about this thing. Because it's so new that the average person on the streets may not quite comprehend what we're explaining. That this is not exactly a tax. You choose. You choose, you pay. If we shift a road to tolling, we take it out of the government books in terms of expenditure. Meaning, it will not be maintained by LMLF. If there's capacity enhancement that you need to do, it will be done by the toll operator, the concessionaire. So when you pay for LMLF at the fuel station, that money does not go to that section of road. It goes to the other sections of roads. And that clarity needs to be there among Kenyans. So we are not saying that we will stop fuel levy. No, fuel levy will be there because in any case it is not even adequate today. For the road sections that we have, it is not adequate. Meaning, if we choose to just keep what we have, where are we taking our economy? I hear you when you talk about the competition between the Central Corridor from our brothers and of course the Northern Corridor for the shippers particularly. And I want to tell you that the kind of tolling that you'll be looking at should be something that you can actually afford. It must be reasonably affordable. You see, if you have the example I made from Mombasa, and you are consuming, say, 10,000 shillings of fuel, for example, and when the road is much better, you are consuming maybe 6,000, 7,000, and we charged you, say, 2,000 to drive through that section of road. I think the maths add up. Makes sense to have the expressway. So that's a kind of conversation that we want to have and ensure that the numbers that we'll be giving Kenyans will be numbers that they can afford. It will be numbers that you can make sense of. It makes sense for the mama that Kumba is talking about to top up her fare to Kitengela and get on the expressway and get home in time, rather than sit in the jam. That's a kind of conversation that we must have. And I believe we are going to achieve that with the investors that we are onboarding. Installing neocolonialism. This is a conversation we've had throughout as government. Do we want Kenyans to hear this road is owned by an American, it's owned by a Chinese, it's owned by a Korean? The conversation we must have is how you as an individual, as a retail investor, you can get into this game. And I think it was explained very well by our two guests that we intentionally invited. So that when you become our ambassadors, you can explain this thing almost end to end, the way KEFA is doing it. And if we need clarifications, we are available for this conversation. So somebody said, talked about the freedom, and it is true, the Constitution guarantees freedom. But I remember reading somewhere once upon a time that freedom is not free. You may check where that is written. It is in our own memorial. That freedom is not? Yes. You'll be free, but it is not for free. So, we'll be free, but it will not be for free. We'll be free to move, but it is not for free. So that you move the way you want and achieve the goals that you intend to. I think we could stop here, but I also want to thank you for making time. Thanks, Kefa and your team, for the efforts. Thank you very much for those who attended. Thank you for contributing. I know this conversation will not end here. I know it will go to Parliament. It will be a conversation that we will have. We'll have it on TVs, we'll have it on radios. But we are looking for ambassadors who understand what we are saying to do the rightful thing, make the right decision for this country. If we choose not to develop Northern Corridor, we probably won't have an economy. So when you ask why we are picking the prime is the most important thing that we must invest in for us to succeed. So please, be our good ambassadors after this lunch. I thank you all.
I want to remind us our round of applause, and we make it 5 factorial. 1, 2, 3. Thank you very much. If you want to use it elsewhere, you can drop an email so that you are not billed. Now, I just want to call 2 people to the stage. The lady who will say the grace before we finish. You can come to the stage. And Mr. Kibet from KRB, also on stage for a vote of thanks. And now, as they execute their duties respectively, is that we have all earned lunch. And I think he mentioned he didn't want to eat before he earns it, but I can confirm that we have all earned lunch. And that lunch is served on the first floor in a place called Big, I think. But the most important is that on our way out, we'll be given a voucher which will usher us into the lunch place. So we'll start with Mr. Kibet from KRB for a vote of thanks. He's aware that it's between us and lunch, so it'll take 1 or 2 minutes. And then she'll pray for the lunch, and then we close. Karibuni.
Thank you, the moderator, for this validation workshop. I think as we come to the close of this very important exercise, I think I'm privileged to move this vote of thanks. First, I will wish to foremost extend our gratitude, our thanks to our peers for having come to grace this occasion. Despite his very busy schedule and other engagements, he was able to have time to come and attend this workshop and to open for us and give us his comments. Secondly, the Director Generals and the representatives who are present, we want also to extend our thank you to you for having supported this tolling policy exercise since it started up to now. We thank you for your leadership. We thank you for your guidance. And in particular, I think I want to single out the Director General from Kenya. You have been with us since morning when we started this program. Up to this time, you are still with us. Thank you, DG. Thirdly, the technical working group. I think you have made a very wonderful presentation. You have given us a lot of insights. You have taken us through the presentation. You have put in a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of time to come up with the document, do the presentation. We appreciate you. We thank you. All participants and representatives from the various organizations who have come to this particular validation workshop. I think we want to thank you for your very valuable contributions. We want to thank you for your meaningful deliberations, for your comments that have gone a long way to enrich the tolling policy. Thank you so much. And finally, I think there are two people here who have also been very key, the sign language interpreters. Thank you for the work that you have done for us. We thank you, we recognize you, and we appreciate you. Thank you all, and may you all have a blessed afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. May we all be upstanding for a word of prayer. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to come and deliberate on the tolling policy. We thank you for all that we have deliberated may be positive onto the tolling policy, Jehovah. And we also say thank you for the gift of life, the gift of health. And we thank you also for our families. And may you also continue blessing the work of our hands. As we depart, Lord, after lunch, may you give us journey mercies. We also say thank you for the provision of food. May you bless it as we partake it. For this I pray in Jesus' mighty name. Amen.
Thank you very much. So the lady at the entrance will give us the vouchers.
Yeah, you can just close. Okay.